In a black cloak, street gospel, light of the temple. Sword swing, killer live from the ghetto. The hood messenger, let them know hell's close. Black burial, the devil in a black cloak.
Yo, what is up? This is Dave One from the Street Gospel Podcast. And I know it's been a minute, man. It's been about 2-3 weeks since we had our last podcast, and I know a lot of people are hitting me up, texting me, yo, Dave, what's cracking, bro? What's going on with the podcast? I know it's been crazy, man. I know it's been crazy. So what happened was our last guest that we had scheduled came down with the vid, so they couldn't make it. Then we had a big time guest that was supposed to come through, and I was hoping that they'd come through, but they didn't make it. They canceled on me that day. So me and Camel were stuck. We thought if we lined those two up, we'd be, cool. Everything would be fine. It didn't quite work out that way, but I got somebody. And I was thinking about him for a long time. I've been following him for a minute on the gram, and I thought we should get this guy. And I go, he'd be good. Great speaker. We met a very long time ago, but anyways, I got a little intro music for him, and I thought I'd just play a little bit of it. So this guy right here, first of all, he's a believer. He's a Brit. He's a husband, a father, a skater. I always have to put jiu-jitsu in there. He's a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Just got his blue belt, but he's a longtime MMA fan. He's an evangelist, a marriage coach, and an author. I mean, what else can this guy do? I don't know. But I want you guys to welcome to the Street Gospel Podcast, Mr. Brian Sumner. What's up, man?
That might be the most serious intro I've ever got. I thought I was just entering a tournament right there. I'm like ready to...
You're ready to start fighting or what, man?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because the last few guys, I think they get surprised. They tell me every time, they go, dude, like, what's up with that intro? Like, the last guy had Diga Hernandez, evangelist, on TV, preaching, and he's like, dude, you made me sound so cool.
It threw him off. He's like, what is going on?
Dude, I've never been introduced like that. When you come to the Street Gospel Podcast, it's like that.
I've just never heard it called the vid. COVID, the vid.
The vid.
It's like, get some good ways of throwing this around. Yeah. Thanks for having me, though.
Thanks for coming out, bro.
Blessed to be out here, yes.
So what's going on, man? I mean, you've been busy?
Yeah, well, today, we're out in Rancho Cucamonga. Brought my 10-year-old hanging out in your living room. And,
Jude out there.
Took him to a skate park and filmed him, got some clips. And I'm just, I filled a pulpit this past week up in L.A., and I'm kind of trying to take a good week or two of just downtime, do stuff around the house, still rolling a bunch, you know what I mean?
Good.
Been a blue belt for about 3 years now. I just looked the other day, so I got to work hard to go get what's next, purple.
Hey, man.
But everything's good. Just riding out the year, being a believer.
Right.
Just seeing a lot of highs. It's been good, but then the wife's family side's kind of had some chaos with sickness and health.
Okay.
So less travel, which has been... This is basically the best year to have COVID for me as far as
slowing
being
down.
home and everything.
Yeah,
for real.
Slow down.
41, slow down, take care of some family stuff. And
that's good, man.
And the Lord's used it all in a mighty way, skating, jiu-jitsu, church. So
right. It does tend to slow you down a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think getting a little restless here and there, sometimes, you're like, okay, some things you just can't control.
Yeah.
But Liverpool.
Yeah.
So I was looking at Liverpool, right? Of course, Camo's a big Beatles fan.
Mm-hmm.
I introduced him to the Beatles early.
Yep.
And that's his group. There's Liverpool FC, huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it just kind of
not a lot.
falls off a little. Then there's Brian Sumner.
Yeah.
So it's the Beatles, Liverpool FC, and Brian Sumner.
I don't think people in Liverpool think like that, but maybe.
I mean, I'm sure there's some other people out there. There's probably some. I know there's got to be some great English actors and maybe some other artists. But I mean, that was the ones that came up the most.
Yeah, crazy place. I mean, it's it was a lot of unemployment, a lot of docks, a lot of roads, and a lot of these Hollywood films you see that are filmed like in England, a lot of it's in Liverpool because there's amazing scenery and culture. Right. 2 huge cathedrals. They just filmed the new Batman where he's literally on the cathedral or the big buildings right there in Liverpool, Robert Pattinson. But yeah, it was like the Beatles, which my mom would go see all the time. My dad would see them all the time, cool. Not that big of a place, but very known and prolific for producing musicians and sports stars. Then the soccer team. And then that's kind of it. Some actors, some TV stuff. It did get voted most influential city in like decades because there's so much ethnicity, there's so much culture. Oh man, if it's to go visit a place, it's amazing. Right. But you go outside the city too much, and it's a pretty rough, violent place as well. So it's pretty crazy coming from there. I love it, but it's definitely crazy.
Does that kind of shape you?
Well, Darren Till is, right?
Yes.
Darren Till is from Walton, which is like where I'm from, born in Fazakerley, Walton County Road. It definitely shapes you to fight or flight life.
Yeah.
You walk down the street right now, someone's going to look at you and, what kind of hat's that? What's that shit? What's this? What are you talking about? And this, it's very, you got to either stick your feet in ready to go or you're out of there and you avoid it.
Right.
I hear Darren Till just in these interviews and stuff. And I'm like, that's just like me growing up. Dry sense of humor, funny, messing with everyone to get a feel for the room. Right. But then there's a lot of violence there and stuff as well. So
a lot of people don't always get that, right?
Yeah.
Especially growing up in Southern California.
Yeah.
They think, well, I know the tough areas. This guy's from England. How tough can he be? But if you look at some of these like soccer hooligans or whoever, it's
they're
rough.
Rowdy.
Yeah, it's rough.
What is it, Wayne Rooney? Or, they'll just headbutt people, punch people, stomp on people. It's a violent place because if you don't hit first, you're getting hit. So I fought out of, being afraid. Like, I don't want to get beat up by this guy. I don't want to, in school, that's what you do. And not that you know how to fight. Everyone's just, you're just swearing at someone, then you're spitting at someone, then you're fighting, and you're just, like, getting out of there.
Right.
It's crazy. So, How
do you get into skating?
So what happened was, there I am in Liverpool. I'm playing football, which is real football, the sport you play with your foot. I don't know if you have one of those loaf of bread things around here they throw with all the pads on. I play football, didn't care about it. My dad said I was good. I got some trophies, played that for 8 years. And then when I was 13, almost, I watched. And then you got to think, for the guys listening, America is such a massive influence around the world. Right. I'm 10, 11, 12. The Simpsons comes out. WWF comes out. Even shows like Married with Children that are on TV and stuff like that. That's what you watch late night. America is huge influence.
Right.
And at the time, Police Academy 4, those movies were everywhere. So I'm watching them, and it's, it's kind of this crude humor, I guess, looking back. I probably shouldn't have been watching it that young. But in one of those...
Were you watching that and Benny Hill?
Benny Hill. Oh, man. Benny Hill. He is crazy. And that's what I mean. It's just, England's just got this...
That was bad.
Benny Hill. Yeah, don't look him up on YouTube,
sorry,
kids. But no, but
Cam, don't be Googling Benny.
But as I'm watching Police Academy 4, there's David Spade, the other actor, and there's a skateboarding scene, and there's Tony Hawk, I think Caballero, Lance Mount, all these guys are in it. I didn't know, but they're grinding curbs, jumping trash cans. I just fell in love with that. I'd never really seen skating. I guess there was a skating boom before I was like that age. Then it died down. And so I'm on vacation in America. Both my sisters came to America. They're 7, 8 years older than me. My dad joked, I was just a mistake. Like he got a boy finally years later. God knew I was coming along. But they were in America, New Jersey. I came across... And what am I getting for my 13th birthday? And I'm like, well, why don't I get a skateboard? So we went in the surf shop in Belmar, New Jersey, bought a skateboard, a Powell Pat Brennan, and I went back home, and that was it. And I was just obsessed, 5-6 hours a day. Fast forward 2 or 3 years. Now I've met all these skaters in the city center. I'm 13, 14, 15, winning competitions, getting noticed in the magazines. And this is just, and I say all that to say... And this is funny, I'll say it because we're talking about fighting and that, but in England, normally 4 schools get together and they become the high school. So it might be 4 regions. And so I had gotten in so many fights because I'd grown up, all I watch is Bruce Lee and Western films, and you're just kind of the hero, this messiah complex.
Yeah.
And I'd gotten in so many fights. If I was going to go to this one high school, I'd have to get in a fight with all these kids from these other schools to see who was the toughest. So I didn't want to go to Allsop. I wanted to go to Hillside. And so I went there so no one would know who I was, get away from it all. And skating was a way that it was just something different.
Wow.
And your baggy clothes and your head's down, you're just doing your thing. And that just, skateboarding literally changed my life. Most of my friends are doing acid and starting to do ecstasy and just getting in very...
Kept you busy.
Oh, listen, there's friends, if I look up their names, I have one friend that's in prison for 26 years selling drugs. Another guy's in prison for throwing a hand grenade through a window, went through the wrong house, blew an old lady's legs off. Another guy killed like 3 or 4 women, like prostitutes. It's crazy. So skateboarding took me away from what could have been an angry kid from Liverpool. So long intro, but hopefully that just makes sense.
No, yeah. Is there a great skate culture in England?
Amazing,
really
amazing culture.
Really?
Oh yeah, because think about it. All the buildings are hundreds of years old, marble. Don't get destroyed. I mean, it's in the city. It's like a mini New York, Philadelphia.
Right.
So
I think a lot of people think that Liverpool is just cobblestone or something.
No, yeah. It's honestly, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Right.
It's worth the vacation, like for you and the bride to go and spend a couple days there, then down to London, Scotland. Amazing.
Be fun.
Yeah.
So skateboarding saved your life.
It did in that sense, because what it did, and we can jump back to that even when we get further in the story, because picture now being 15, 16, you're finishing school at that age, you're going to art school, I'm getting noticed. There's a guy from England, very famous skateboarder.
Wait a minute. So you're an artist too?
Well, I went to art school just to go. I mean, I only went because it was in the city.
Good? But if you're a good artist. Were you good?
I passed with good high scores. Yeah, I don't do much with it now.
Come on, man.
I could draw Ninja Turtles.
What else you do? You use computer programming.
I can't fish. I play guitar. What else? I don't know.
Come on, man.
No, I'm a one and done. I can focus at one thing. And well, I think you mentioned I'm a podcast host.
So you're a Renaissance guy then. Right? You're just good at everything.
I wrote a book.
I hate guys like you.
I wrote a book because it needed to happen. I'm doing jiu-jitsu because it's like therapeutic. So, but it literally, skating led me that way. And a guy from Liverpool, Jeff Rowley, probably one of the most famous street skaters, helped get me noticed. Tony Hawk invited me over. Now I'm invited to live in, California at 15, 16.
How did your parents react to that?
Well, that's the crazy thing, because you start skating at 13. So let's say you're 5 years older than me. I'm getting to know you. You're coming back to my house. There's 5 or 10 friends coming up. There's a 40, 50, 60, I'm not messing, like 70 to 100 people skate culture. I've been in this for 2 years with all these older guys.
Right.
I'm going around England with them. You mature really quick.
Sure. You're
not drinking and partying because you're focused on skating. And then because Jeff was from Liverpool and he was in Huntington Beach, he invited me to come stay with him, and they were like, this is all you've done the last 3 years of your life. You finished school. You were going to art school. We don't care if you do that. And they were fine. And looking back, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, I have a 20-year-old who's just moving out, and I'm like, that seems early still, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Cam's 20.
Yeah.
I got a daughter that lives here. She's 24.
Yeah.
I mean, I told them they could stay as long as they want. It's fine with me.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we're not talking about, hey, going from LA to OC. We're talking about going across the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And staying with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
And
skate culture is a lot of partying, raging.
Right.
There's, skating's neutral, but it's like anything. No one's trying to make it negative, but a lot of it is just sitting around. You're making, and to say it like this, skating suddenly blew up. So Tony Hawk had the video game come out. I'm an amateur. My hair's jet black. That kind of heavy music thing came in.
Right.
I stood out because of the accent, had a pro board, pro shoe. You went from making a couple of $100, a month when you're living with 4 guys. You're the amateur eating Taco Bell all day in the jacuzzi, which is like, yeah, I'm living the American dream, to now, $10, $20, $30,000 a month. And you're not doing crazy stuff, but like, you're just living the American dream. Didn't know God, didn't have faith, touring the world, signing autographs. And I'm still this young kid. I mean, I'm 17, 18, 19. And then my life would change all over again when I met my wife to be, So
right.
Yeah.
What were those early skating years like? Were you making a lot of money? Were you? I mean, obviously, girls wherever, all that stuff. Just how do you be that young and it just doesn't get to your head?
You know what? I don't know what. I honestly, this sounds ridiculous, but you hear this a lot. More we hear about Bruce Lee. There was something about watching those films with the way he lived his life. So you're always focused on your craft. And I was reading philosophy books when I was 12, 13. So his whole thing was, gung fu. It's the whole, the idea of the parable, you go into the woods and you see this old Asian man, he's got the chopsticks, and he catches the fly.
Right.
If he can do that with chopsticks, imagine what he'll do to you with a sword. So it's that focused life. So Bruce looked at his martial art as a vehicle. And so when I read that book, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, and he says, martial arts was his vehicle, I just said, man, skateboarding's my vehicle, where for you, you do the podcast enough, that's a vehicle. You do jiu-jitsu enough, it's a vehicle. That's why you become professional at it. So as I'm over there, I wasn't like chasing women really. I mean, sure, I got to know people. I would become emotionally involved and have relationships and stuff. But I was also like, I don't want a serious girlfriend right now.
You were focused.
I was and I worked 6-7 hours a day. Didn't really, aside from sugar, I mean, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't partying.
Right.
And I wasn't a citizen, so I didn't know if I would be here. Every day was like, if I break my ankle, I'm going back home. So I was real calm, and I was around pretty mellow guys that would go on to become crazier. Live with Andrew Reynolds, Jim Greco, Ali Boulala. A lot of those guys wrestle with substance abuse and that, and they're all doing well today. I mean, praise God, love those guys. But that was the culture. Birdhouse, Audio, Volcom, almost going to go do stuff with Baker, and those videos. Anyone who's listening who has kids who skate, they would all know who these people are.
Right.
But for me, it was just I just love being in America. Like, I get to be here.
It's crazy that at that young of age you were just. I mean, I see you as a very focused guy now.
Yeah.
But I guess you're kind of born with that.
But again, it's back to that Bruce Lee mentality. You watch the movie, and he has one thing he's focused on, and he rides the whole film out, and there's an agenda. And so my parents were very driven. My sisters were very driven. So I was just raised like you have a certain amount of hours in the day. You give, and it's actually very biblical. You work hard by the sweat of your brow 6 days of the week, and then the Sabbath rest. So, and that again goes back to Liverpool. Unless you're someone that's maybe a baguette on the street or a down and out who doesn't care,
right?
People want to work hard. They want to craft their craft. So
that's wild, man.
Yeah.
I love to talk to driven people. I wouldn't say that I'm a great student. I have a difficult time learning. I got to read things like 4 or 5 times to set in and try to write little notes. Yeah. But I hate people that are so driven and it just resonates quick and it just sticks. And I'm just like, how?
I have to work at stuff. I mean, I have to read. I'm so intense that I want to read things a few times. And I haven't read that many books in a while, but I need to just be focused on like, okay, we're here doing the podcast. I'm going to take him skating. Tomorrow I'm going to work on the garden. I'm going to roll tomorrow night.
You're focused.
That's how I kind of operate. Yeah.
Yeah. So. I admire people like that. So you meet your wife.
Yeah.
So somebody caught your eye.
Yeah. And and the thing that caught my eye was she's, she's got native in her. She's Mexican. She's Italian. She's got some French. So she's fiery. Let's just say it like that. Very relaxed, vegan gal at the time, working at this healthy place. Her best friend was dating Jeff Rowley, my friend, who got me all sponsored and that. And so we just start connecting, and she'd had a boyfriend when I met her, an older guy. She lived in New Jersey. And I'm just thinking, I love America. I don't want a serious girlfriend. She breaks up with him, comes home. She's not a believer. I'm not a believer. And we hang out literally for 4 months, like nonstop every day. I'm just turning pro, just starting to make more money. Obviously didn't care about all that, but it came through because I've been skating the Van skate park, did a melon grab, bent my ankle, and on the way home, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to call up Tracy. Called her up. Hey, you know what? I'm probably going to be icing my foot for a few days. Are you around? You want to hang out? And she was like so thrown off from it, even though people that try to set us up, she's coming off this relationship. And this is where it gets funny to the guys and girls listening. We were together every day for 4 months. I'm about to go back to England, and we couldn't even deal with being apart. I'd gone on a trip while that 4 months was on, and we were like in tears. Like we were just like obsessed. I tell her, I'm going to go back to England, or do you want to marry me? Go down to the tower in Huntington, propose to her in Tower 8, right there in HB, everyone out here. She says yes. Don't tell her parents. Don't tell my parents.
How old are you, both of you guys?
I'm 18. She's 20.
Whoa.
I can't even drive. I mean, so we've been around 16, 17, seeing each other. But it's like I get married at 19, you know. I'm just turning 19. She drives out to Vegas the next day. We get married. Tell no one. Have a son 10 months later. Don't know the Lord. You know, the preacher at the altar's reading 1 Corinthians 13, and we're in tears, thinking we understand what love is. Then we have our son, and then her family, who's heavily Catholic, is like, well, why didn't you get married? We go to the courthouse to get the documents, and whoever was in charge just tells, like, the dad, like, yeah, you guys are already married. And so then the whole Catholic Italian side of the family is like, man. Okay, you guys you lied to us, but you got, so now we're,
did it right. Yeah.
So pro skater, money's coming in, married the girl, having a son, living the American dream. But biblically, you know, that verse sticks out. You're gaining the whole world, but you're losing your soul.
Sure.
And here's the thing about skating for those listening. Skaters were very relevant, and people, they say skateboarding and music are the most influential things in America. So 2 years ago, I remember telling my son, in this next year, this is how clothes are going to look, because it was all turning 90s. And what that means is we would go to events, and like John Fogerty would walk over to you, and I'd be like, is this John Fogerty? And he'd be like, hey, all my kids skate. Do you want to come skate at our house? So all these very famous, wealthy people, their kids are all looking up to you.
Right.
So you get to see this culture. And even then, before I was a believer, you see, you know, because I'm on top of my world, but they're on top of their world.
Right.
And it just was like, it was all ministering to me to like, what's life about? Because I'm still young and, you know, wide-eyed, saying I'm in America and now I'm married, and what am I going to do after this? So the Lord was definitely already dealing with me. So, yeah.
It's crazy to get married that young.
Oh,
I got married, I was 20, my wife was 19.
Yeah.
It's cool because we were together, you know, before that.
Yeah.
And I always say there's something special, even though there was a lot of hard times.
Yeah.
You know, being
That's how
young.
you grow.
But that teenage love.
Yep.
There's something about your teenage love that just lasts forever.
Yep.
You know, and it's just like you're in love. You've been through your teens, your 20s, your 30s, 40s.
Yeah. I'm just hitting there 41.
You know, like 46, man. But there's something special about that.
Yeah.
Married.
Yeah.
Kid.
Yeah.
20 years old?
Yeah, I'm 20, 21. She's 22, 23. And we've been together, I want to say, about a year and a half. And you know, most people that know our story, this is really where it all launched us. We just aim to live happily ever after. We bought the Disney lie, the story, you know, you get married, it's all good. I married her because I love her. I want to take care of her. She married me the same way. But we had no clue about life. And she'd been in past relationships. I'd had people I was close with. I'd say they were girlfriends over the years, but nothing serious. So we're now fighting. Things are crazy. And we're just thinking, okay, I'm fighting with this person that much. There's issues with every little thing. No infidelity, nothing crazy like that. We just didn't get
just
along.
Young. Yeah.
And we're just like, maybe we married the wrong person. Maybe you're not my soulmate. Maybe blah, 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 blah. You know what? Maybe we should get divorced.
Wow.
I'm angry, punching holes in stuff, getting in fights. I'm wound up. Everything else in my life's working out, but this one thing is crazy. And so now you fast forward another year or two, we're actually went through and got divorced. And I was like, you know what? I'm just over this. Like, skating worked out, money, the whole mindset of wanting just to have this perfect life. You don't realize it, but we're all buying that dream. Every woman listening has an idea of what marriage should be like, how the house should be, how much money in the bank, how, you know, sex life should, all the rest of that. So for me, it all comes tumbling down. We're separated. And I'm like, what? I didn't realize it, but I was asking the question, like, well, what matters then? What's true? And that led me to the conversation. Really, it was, you know, if I just evolved, came from this thought, if I just evolve, I'm just roadkill. Who cares if I'm here or not?
Yeah.
But if I'm made in someone's image, I better figure out whose it is, because and here's the option, back to Rabbi Zacharias, either everyone listening was created or they weren't. Either there's a reason for your life or there's not. And if there's not, who cares who's the president? Who cares who cut you off? Who cares about anything you care about?
Right.
You're just time plus chance plus matter. You're done. You're just evolving anyway. You're going to lose in the end. Or there's someone out there that says you matter. There is a purpose. There is a goal. I'd never read the Bible.
It's strange that you, once again, the philosophical thinking kicked in for you.
It's exactly what it
Right?
was.
You're just thinking like, what is this it?
That's it.
I achieved everything such a young age, and that's all there is, and I still wasn't happy.
And I can point you to reading the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, the things Bruce said. I can point you to the Dragon movie, how even it's quoted of Bruce, you know, it's like a sculptor who takes away the access till the truth is revealed. Here's my skating, here's my life, now I'm divorced.
Peeling it away.
You know, it was just peeling it back, what's true. And from that, I began to ask all the questions. Okay, well, what about priests? What about Rastafari? What about Mormons? And it was really only the Bible that I opened that God began to deal with me. So
It seems like you would be pretty thorough
thorough
about going through every religion to be like, no.
Well, so much so that, you know, when I was coming to faith, I was also getting into a lot of fights and craziness because that rowdiness and anger. I got in 8 fist fights, full-on brawls in the street with Americans who started stuff with me, and I just wanted to finish it. I was angry. I was hurt. I get on probation. I'm in trouble. I get put in community service at a Christian thrift store. So listen, and this is the truth to those listening. I never met one Christian my whole life in England. I knew a Mormon girl at church who was amazing. Her family, they'd come by her house and drop off the pamphlets. A couple Jehovah's Witnesses, a lot of Muslims, a lot of Buddhism, and almost New Ages and what it would become. Right. I remember one Christian. And I lived 5 doors down from a giant Catholic church, but no one ever told me about Jesus, which is crazy. And so now I'm getting older and I'm trying to question this. I'm like, well, wait a minute. And I had community service in a Christian thrift store. I only picked it after a list of like 250 names because I thought they're going to have cool khakis and little, you know, button-up shirts I can use for skating. I walk in the thrift store. Hank Williams' I Saw the Light is playing. There's a whole bookshelf of Christian books. And the first book the guy gives me, the guy in charge kind of looked like you, a little bit bigger. He's like, hey, if you read this book, I'll give you extra hours. And it was The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel.
Nice.
I mean, God's got. So I go home. Over here. I'm listening. So I go home. I'm reading The Case for Christ,
which is the perfect book for a guy like you. That's
thorough.
So that's
what triggered the thought. Yeah,
very thorough, very philosophical. Like here, that's
because he's a detective trying to disprove the truth.
Yes.
I mean, I have a friend today, John May. He's this funny kid I grew up with, becoming really known as an actor in Liverpool. It's wild, you know, all kinds of cussing a storm and that on TV, kids. Don't go watch what he's saying. But when I came to faith, he hit me up and said, Brian, I have to know what happened because you are too thorough. He said, I remember you as a kid. You were so detail focused. Like, how did this happen? And still to this day, when we talk, like, I just got to know. He always wants me to unpack. And so it happened that I went to the Rastafaris, who I'm all friends with in skating, and you know, the Bible comes down the Nile, becomes the Pibli, and the Mormons with Jesus and and all the rest of it, Jesus and Satan being brothers, the Jehovah's Witnesses. And it was really when I opened the Bible, the Genesis 1, and it was a very personal question. God says, let us make man in our image. And I'm like, well, if I'm made in your image, why does my life suck?
Wow.
Like, I'm going to the thrift store, I'm finishing Lee Strobel's book, I'm listening to all this worship, and they actually told me in the Christian thrift store, if you come to our church service of a night and you help make the French fries and the burgers, which I'd never made fries and burgers, you know what I mean? I'm the one skating. People have given it to me at the barbecue.
Skater making
I'm
30,
useless.
40 grand a month, and now you're
I'm basically getting invited to like ask all these questions. I remember giving money to the church when I'd go overnight because I'm just like, but that verse, let us make man in our image, it allowed me to realize, okay, if I'm made in your image, why does my life suck? And Genesis 2 and 3 answers that. Well, I put Adam and Eve in the garden, and you know what I told them? Don't eat of that tree, but they ate of it, and in that day they died. And the Bible is the story of man doing it wrong. Even when we get it right, like Israel never had to be exiled for 400 years. They were God's people, but they weren't listening, you know. So and here's what's amazing. Well, just for those listening, I was probably 165, 170 at the time. We were vegan, so you know, we didn't eat meat. Picture reading the Old Testament as a vegan.
Sin.
Well, think about that. Think about reading the Old Testament as a vegan.
Right.
So wait, every year because you guys are bad, you're going to shred the lamb a bit. You're going to kill this. But
how many bulls are?
Yeah. So you're killing all these animals. It sounds barbaric. I'm done with community service. I'm still fighting with this woman. Christian Osoy got out of prison at the time because he'd been in there for 4 or 5 years. That was like his Bible school. We were connecting. And what happened was I knew all about God. I could have come in your office and gone, hey, this is that. Hey, I've heard of this book. Hey, I was looking at the Greek and Hebrew before I was a believer.
Wow.
But I didn't know Jesus. And many people listening could know all about God, but not know Jesus. Yeah. They could be someone's son or grandkid, and they're just tuning in for skating or jiu-jitsu. But what happened was I realized that I knew about him, but I didn't know him. And the issue was, and it was finally coming to a head, it was my sin. You know, I was going to God to say, can you just change my life like some of these Christians seem to talk about? So what happened was, as I'm finishing community service, I was buying a house, and this is my thinking. I'll buy a house, I'll just be around Tracy and Dakota, and even if life's crazy, even if I'm not around one day, I mean, think about what that means. If I'm willing to take my own life because life hurts so much, at least she'll have a house and all the rest, even if we don't work out. That's how crazy it was. But buying that house, the next few months of searching, God began to show me, like, your issue is your sin. And I remember finishing the community service, coming home, getting in a huge fight with Tracy, who I'd invited to live. You know, we got the house together, but we're still divorced. I remember going in the room, an office like this, and saying, God, whoever you are. And I remember saying, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. I remember saying Yahweh, the tetragrammaton, like God doesn't know. And I said, I've been fighting with this woman. I'm coming to you for the wrong reasons. There's money in the bank. I'm on the magazines. And I said, and it was like, I just said, but I need forgiveness. I just didn't care about, I just need forgiveness. And it was like, in that instant, it was like the presence of God was there. Here's what I mean. My mind was so, I would just quote Bruce and think philosophically in that. In one instant, I knew I was a sinner. I knew I needed forgiveness. I knew I've lied, I've lusted, I've cheated. You know, the whole Ray Comfort idea of just, we're wretched. And it was like the presence of God showed up as far as I knew he was dealing with me. Wow. And in one instant, while my ex-wife's asleep in one room with my son in our bed, I'm in the other room in the office just mad at God, crying out for 40 minutes. In one instant, it all changed. I felt the presence of God, and it was very tangible to me. And for those who go, well, wouldn't you drop down dead? No, his spirit can deal with you. I knew in that instant, nothing else I'd read, nothing else I'd studied, that the Lord was saving me. And I sat there laughing and weeping, saying, I can't believe I didn't know this till I was 24. And I said, God, I'll give you my life. And even that term sounds ridiculous. You know, God's the one who does all the saving. But what it means is I'm following you. I'm surrendering. I'll get baptized. Here's my skateboard. I'll remarry Tracy, whatever you want. And it was like in that instant, God dealt with me. I went and lay down in bed next to my son and her. She sat up like a zombie with her eyes closed, does not remember it to this day. And for 10 minutes repeats most of what I was having a conversation with God in that room for like 40 minutes. Wakes up the next day as an Italian Mexican Catholic, you know, she is. You're not even a Christian. You've never been baptized. What are you talking about when I'm telling her I'm going to follow God? In 3 weeks, she comes to church, comes to faith. We're remarried in 3 months. My son's going to be what? He's getting married in April. He's 20. My daughter, Eden, is 13. And Jude Mike is sitting out here on the couch, is 10. So my two youngest kids wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for Christ. My oldest son wouldn't have his parents back together. But most importantly, I wouldn't have been forgiven because, and here's what's important for people, Christianity isn't believing at the end of life that hopefully you find out, I guess I made the right decision, or I realize, oh, I guess God's real. It's not the Simpsons going up the escalator and Homer's surprised, like, oh, this is real. Christianity is when you know you are a sinner and you're wretched and you're dead in it, that the Holy Spirit shows up then. Right. And he showed up in September 2004. He dealt with me. I don't have faith now that I hope God's real. My faith is in what God's leading me to. You know what I mean? My faith is in like this podcast ministering to someone. My faith is in whatever unfolds in the world. My faith is God leading me. It's not like that he's real. You know it. Yeah. And that even to the extent of you want to be really crazy. I spoke at a university recently. They go, can you give scientific evidence? And I go, well, yeah. And the point is, what's scientific? Well, the scientific evidence God gives you is when you know, what do you mean? Jesus to Nicodemus tells him, you can't see the kingdom unless you're, I mean, for you, is Christ Lord?
Yes.
You just know it. When he opens your eyes, you go from death to life. The scientific evidence for you is subjective for everyone else, but that's how God chose to do it. When someone says,
It's so funny because they want the scientific evidence, but
what they don't want to do what it takes to see
it. But you have to have the faith, right?
Well, this is what I did at the university. I took a wallet out and I put it on the stand and I said, there's $30 in this wallet. Who believes?
Right.
And I go, so whether you believe or not, you don't know till you open this wallet. What is the evidence for the God of the Bible? The Bible says the gospel is the power. The good news is the evidence. So when Nicodemus heard it, when Peter heard it, when you heard it, when I heard it, that's how God ministers and moves and saves. And my point is, Nicodemus says, we see who you are. And Jesus says, you can't see, Nicodemus, unless your eyes are open and you're born again. He said it to Peter. Who do you say I am? Well, people say this and this. No, Peter, who do you say I am? You're the Son of God. You're the Messiah, is what he's saying. Flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. You are dead. You come to life. You're washed in the blood. You're forgiven. And here's why I say that. I sounded this crazy in 2004. When I was done preaching at university, I said everything I said is meant to sound crazy to you right now, because if you're not a believer,
you don't believe.
It shouldn't make sense. Yeah. And if God is convicting you, and if you know now you're a sinner, and you know that there's a place called hell, there's eternal judgment, but that God so loved you, he sent his son, that is God extending his arm to you and dealing with you. How do you respond? And I told him most won't. The road's narrow, only 1 in 4, you know, the parable of the sower. And that's when people go, don't tell me if I can believe or not. Well, I'm telling you what God says. Go deal with them then. Because subjectively, there's scientific evidence for every individual.
Sure.
But if you don't open that Bible, if you don't hear his voice, you don't know if there's $30 in the wallet or not.
If you don't give it a chance, right?
Yep.
I think it goes. I think the Lord knew what he was doing when he got philosophical, Brian Sumner, and then you went through every religion pretty much.
All the stages.
Trying to figure it out and realize. I'm sure you opened your heart to the
whatever
JW,
the truth is,
Rastafarian, all this stuff, and never really felt that connection.
I could tell you why. Okay, so Mormons are going to tell you Jesus and Satan are brothers. Well, Genesis says the serpent was the shrewdest of all the creatures God created, so he was created. But Colossians tell you all things are made by Jesus. So if one's always been and one's created, they're not brothers. So Jesus and Michael the archangel. An angel will never let you worship him. Jesus will allow you to worship him. So factually, you know, and I'd go into a shoe company and there'd be a woman going, hey, I got you this book, and it's Ravi Zacharias. What's amazing is once I came to faith and shared these testimonies,
Ravi, one of the
apologetics, all that.
So
to me, it's going to minister to me. For those who are asking those questions, look up a Ravi Zacharias. But what's amazing is I get a book one day and it's signed and autographed, and it's Lee Strobel. It's like, hey, your I Am Second video has gone everywhere, and you keep mentioning that you read my book, so here's a signed copy. And I was like, all right. That was pretty cool, you know.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
So God did his work through those men, many of those women, and so now that I'm remarried and I have skating to offer, and I'm like, what do I do with this? You know, like, whatever's in your hand, use for the Lord. If it's the jiu-jitsu mats, if it's an accounting, if it's this camera.
Let's talk about that real quick. I think a lot of people are cookie cutter when it comes to what they think you can use for the Lord. I've always, told my kids, whatever talent. Cam is very good, technical stuff. Yeah. Very, very good at talking to people. Yeah. My daughter takes pictures. She's funny. I don't know where she gets that from. Maybe her dad. But they have their talents. And I always said, just use whatever the Lord gives you for his glory. Yeah. And I think a lot of people try to get the young people and say, well, you should be doing like this. You should be the guy with the, ripped jeans, super tight, the V-neck with the.
You mean for the youth pastor look or whatever?
The chain with the key.
To try and relate or something.
And I always, that's not, and I always felt that way too. I could never be the cookie cutter leader at church or the guy. I was like, look, this is who I am. I feel better about myself. I feel that this is who God made me to be. Yeah. It may not be your cup of tea, but it's going to be somebody's out there. Yeah. I mean,
well, he made you that way. Like my oldest son, he's going to listen, agree or disagree. He builds websites. He did skate lessons. He was a valet guy. He surfs every day, skates, jiu-jitsu. So I got to look at him. And when he sat with my lead pastor, Andrew Shea, he's younger than me, great pastor at our church. He told Dakota, they're just hanging out over coffee, and Andrew's helping him. I goes, what does your dad tell you to do? And he's talking about growing up, and he goes, he just tells me to read the Bible. And I didn't know that's all I told him to do, but I'm like, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you you should go to Princeton. I can't tell you you should start a business. Even in the book of Acts, it said they set them apart and laid their hands on them for the call they were meant to step into. And I think most people kind of know already what their gifting and talent is. I think your disposition, I think the way God, because, God enables us. I didn't choose to be an evangelist. I'll go speak to 100,000 people, and he's the one who moves their hearts. But God created me to be able to do that. So back to your point, skate ministry is huge. The Jiu-Jitsu outreach world is huge.
Right.
This is so outside the box that sometimes, and I'm for the local church, believe me, but you said the word cookie cutter. It's true. We can get so used to looking what every generation has done, and we're not disregarding any of that. But Satan's at work in the world using people's gifts and talents. Right. So why not use what he's using for bad for good? And I heard it best like this. It was Luis Palau, who's in his 80s now, stage 4 cancer, heavy South American. I think he's Argentinian evangelist. And he's telling all these evangelists, we're all there. It's like 300 people. And he's stage 4. He could go anytime, pray for him. He's like, there's some guy on the internet. He's looking at things he shouldn't be. I won't say it because my son's over here. He's looking at things he shouldn't be. And then you show up with your video or your podcast. Get him, Jesus. And he's like, you don't think the Apostle Paul would use every means? You don't think he wants to be in the jiu-jitsu mats?
Right.
I talked to you earlier about me being friends with Dana White. When Dana White flew me out to hang out with him and his family in the Fertitas years ago to bring like UFC and MMA into skating, I sat with them at Italian restaurants and I ministered to them. I got to share with him about Jesus, hear about Jesus. And my buddy Jason Lambert came to faith sitting at a UFC with me, talking to him. Jeez. A lot of these guys I'm friends with, so it's saying, use skateboarding. To me, it was different. I was in church praying and I felt like I said to the Lord, what do you want me to do with skating? And I felt like the Lord impressed on my heart, take off your shoes, this is holy ground. Like, I'm not saying I audibly heard it, I'd have fell over probably. But I felt like and I said, Lord, but the verse is take off your sandals. And I feel like what he was saying was, this is about your skating. And in one instant, I knew people are going to check in with you every few years. And here's why. A lot of skaters said, well, Brian, why didn't you go after skating like crazy? Well, for one, the first ministry I have is marriage. So if I just went touring around the world after a broken marriage, yes, we're remarried, but it probably isn't going to get much better.
I was going to ask you about that.
So that's exactly it. So I had to go, wait a minute, God, I'm going to focus on my wife. And the feeling I got from him was, if some skater now is listening, which is most of who hears what I'm doing, some skater from 10, 20 years ago catches up with Brian today and says, what? This dude's a believer. God restored his marriage. He's done this, done this, done this. They're probably going to message me tonight, So God worked on my marriage. I stayed in the skate world for a long time. I still have a board through a brand Reliance. I go do a lot of speaking at events and all the rest of it, the big Franklin Graham festivals and all the rest. God used all that. But my point in saying that is whatever you can do, right? If it's film, if it's podcasting, and my wife has a raw foods thing, a small thing that she does for fun. It's all vegan, called Pure Zoe, based on Revelation, the Zoe life. She uses that, healthy food. Yeah. A woman comes to the house who's struggling with her diet or how to eat. There's a conversation. Right. There's a way to engage. Should she not do that? Should she not do what she feels like? So you've got to put it on the altar and see what's your goal. Yeah. Do we need your podcast to be the best thing ever? Have we got to compete to be black belts before the other one? Those things can become idols. Or am I like, Lord, I'm trusting it to you every day. Right. Use it.
Yeah, and that's, I always say, I think my biggest, talent is being able to make a connection.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, people look at me or look at the podcast. Yep. How did you get that guy? And it's nothing I did. I just think the Lord gave me something that said, people say, hey, this guy's legit. All this art up here, I met all these guys, which is legit, I think Deffer, he did a lot of stuff for Ruka and stuff. And so how did I meet these guys? I mean, I was looking up to these guys and at one time and in the art world or graffiti world, and then I get to meet them. Then I get to share the love of Jesus through that.
And how is God going to get them onto a podcast with someone they trust? Right. So if he used that avenue where you're looking at it from like, oh man, look what they've accomplished, and God's like, yeah, but they might not realize how much I want to unpack their story where you have that gift. You know what I mean? And then God's like, yeah. So it just becomes like it makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Even with the jiu-jitsu world. Yeah, I mean, I go to the gym and I'm not a pastor. Yeah. But they call me Pastor Dave. Oh, here comes Pastor Dave. Or the guys come over. some guys were a little worried about the vid, and I didn't want nobody to get sick. And then when the riots and the defund police stuff, we had some police that come and roll. Yeah. And I said, hey, can I pray with you guys?
Yeah.
What?
They love that stuff.
Let me pray with you guys. Mm-hmm. And I had some guys that were from the streets that were just rolling, and let me pray with you guys. And then one day, they come. And then all right, guys, see you guys
Are we going to pray?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they leave, and they get down halfway down the driveway, and one of the guys, hey, Dave, we forgot to pray. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, yeah, come back. And we pray, right? And I had one of them hit me up the other day. He's like, dude, I need to go back to the garage so we can roll. But
I need to come choke you and get some prayer.
Right, I know. Like, I need the prayer now. They're kicking my butt.
But you made this relevant point, and here's how I want someone to understand it. Like I had Beneil Dariush on the podcast. He's a UFC fighter. How do you justify what you're doing? Like boxers 4 a year die. People in MMA don't die. You get hit once, you're done. They're both mutually doing it. It's not my thing, but am I going to go interrupt everything they're doing? But my point is, I'm a big guy now. He's like 240, and it's mass and all that stuff, and I should get down to 200 anyway. I'm just, that's my laziness for sure. It helps when I'm on the mats as well.
Blame it on the vid.
Yeah, there you go. But think about this. So my professor, and to those listening, that's my professor in Jiu-Jitsu, Magno Almeida, who's a checkmat guy under Barbosa. But he just says, you need to start coming rolling. And my wife's like, babe, you sit with people all week who are depressed, suicidal, the marriages are failing, kids who hate their life. You're carrying a lot of junk. And I'm not skating as much at that time because I'm focused on a lot of ministry and preparing sermons. And Magno said, you should come roll in the gym. And I was like, all right, I'll try it. I go and start rolling. He wants me to be there as a pastor. He wants me to be there so my marriage book's on the table. I'm rolling with people.
Wow.
I start getting into this, and I'll just boast in how the Lord used all this. I'm a 2-stripe white belt at the time. I'm going to Costa Rica. I speak in a gym, and one of the guys there is a blue belt. And I just mean a workout gym. And the guy's like, will you come speak at my gym tonight? And I'm like, oh, yeah. And so I go with, the 20 people we took from our church to Costa Rica. I speak in his gym. And I'm like, hey, you're a blue belt? Yeah. Do you have a professor? Oh, yeah, he's down the street. We go down the street, knock on the door, 6'4", Brazilian guy. I think he's a black belt under, it might be Daniel Gracie. Jen de Lima, his name is. He's like a 1 or 2 stripe black belt now. So the pastor I'm with gets to know him. We start talking. He's like, hey, would you come to my gym? I go to the guy's gym, and I'm a 2-stripe white belt. And he says, he can't speak any English. You'll never see this happen, but I want Brian to show us techniques in a class. He goes, you'll never see a black belt do this, but as a pastor, as someone I've connected with, I want him to show it. Here's what's crazy. I show this technique that one of the checkmat guys had showed at our gym a few weeks before. You're in side control, you hook here, you slide out the back, and you cross the arm, and you strain. I show the technique, and the professor's like, this is crazy. I haven't seen this technique in 7 or 8 years, he said. Leo Vieira showed it to me when I was a blue belt. He says, I was going to teach this. And if you listen, I've never seen anyone do it. So my point is, we connect. I share my testimony. A bunch of the gym, 7, 8 guys respond. I come back in about 3 months, and we hold a seminar in the school gym where 1 in 6 kids in Costa Rica are molested or raped women. This professor starts connecting with the pastor. The pastor today is a blue belt with a few stripes like me, and I got 4. He's got 2. We've been back 3 or 4 times, and we've done jiu-jitsu outreaches ever since. Wow. God has just used that, and I say that to those listening. Jiu-jitsu is on its 4th or 5th wave. It's blowing up in America. Yeah. If I walk into your school, and I'm a brown belt or black belt, and I'm a pastor, the way that professor is going to honor me, and we can honor God. I mean, I spoke in a church in LA this weekend, a snowball. I walk in, and a guy I just met, Sinostro, he's there, and he comes in, he's all big as ears. I'm like, hey, he doesn't know I'm the preacher, so I'm like, hey, I'm the only white guy in there, everyone's Brazilian. And he goes shake my hand, and I arm drag him, and he looks at me, and he's laughing, and I don't say anything. And then I'm the guy who goes up to preach. So he's like thinking, like, who's this white guy? What's he doing? He's being funny. He's just yoked, big. And so then we talk a bit. He's best friends with a load of my friends. He's in the airport, and someone randomly says to him, you going to church today? And he's like, what? He goes home. He's coming back from a tournament in Arizona. That's funny. He's in, and so he's like, you know what? I'm so tired, but I'm going to go to church today. He shows up to church. I'm the guy preaching. He's best friends with one of my friends. He has this crazy story of God doing amazing. So I'm just saying, a lot of the guys there were jiu-jitsu guys. So God is using all those things.
Right.
And for me, it helps my health. It's a way to connect with people. It's replacing a lot of what skating was to me. I can't skate forever, but jiu-jitsu will keep me strong. So I'm just saying, so long as you're seeing people reached and loved and served with what you have, God will honor it, because it can become an idol quick. You know, you take my mind in skating and put it on jiu-jitsu, and I suddenly want to be this belt and this belt. I can't do that. I've got to be able to say, Lord, I'll go as much as I can as far as respects my time with my call, and that's it. So,
Did jiu-jitsu change your life?
Oh yeah, I mean it's just the mindset, and it just calms you down. I mean, I'm someone that was rowdy, you know, fight or flight, and someone almost runs your kid over in a Toys R Us parking lot and starts swearing at you. A lot of Americans will do that in England. You just get headbutted. So I'm like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? As jiu-jitsu, I'm just like, I'm not even going to go get involved anymore. I'm just done with the drama, and I just like it.
It changed my life. I think a lot. I started late.
Yeah,
I started late. And I started because Cam
Yeah.
was getting picked on.
Yeah, yeah.
So he started first and training with my buddy. Then I started training. But spiritual wise, it kind of lines up very, very much. And I like what I had Jason Manley here a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I said, how do you tell somebody as a believer that, you know, and they look at your Instagram and it's just violence.
Yeah.
You know, it's you beating up somebody or you.
But explain the violence to them. People who don't know. You're not like punching someone's face in. You're rolling with someone.
And the philosophy with jiu-jitsu is a lot of it. I mean, you have your different sects.
Yeah.
As far as, you know, some are attacks, some are,
Yeah.
you know, defense, and that's how they start.
Sweeps or whatever.
Yeah, but he told me something that was really good, and he says, look, one day, one point in time, you're going to either have to defend yourself, defend somebody you know, or defend somebody that can't defend themselves.
Yeah.
And that you don't know. And
they're the orphan, they're the widow, they're the least. Yeah.
And he goes, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Mm-hmm. We're supposed to do that. And I just thought, like, he goes, we're not out looking for fights. We know how to curb it.
How many black belts do you see actually fighting people when a fight starts? You don't.
None.
They take him down, they hold him. The guy's normally swearing at him. I mean, go look up Matt Serra in that restaurant in, like, Vegas when the guy's almost fighting him.
Yeah.
And Matt Serra just holds him down, and then the cops come in, and he's like, can you get off? And he goes, you want me to get off? And he goes, are you sure you can control the guy?
Yeah.
And Matt's just being funny.
Right.
But it is true. And here's why. I was coming out of a mother's restaurant in Huntington, and my friend, the Calvary pastor, was there, and we were talking about, you know, some of the Romans 13. And he says, you know, Brian, as much as you're to provide for your family, you're to provide protection. Now, we can get obsessed with that, and everyone that's whatever, we're just crazy and rowdy.
Right.
But what about if I turn a corner and there's a girl who's getting raped by two guys?
Right.
Should I be able to go defend her? What if I see a dad beating his kid in the street? Is it wrong for me? If we're literally turning the other cheek on everything, and you can go into what that means. There's a saying, there's a reason why he's hit with one hand and he turns the other cheek for what it would mean for the strong hand. It's saying we're going to stand in boldness for our faith.
Right.
You don't go looking for it. And I don't roll just to defend. To me, it's like become a ministry. I'm like, Lord, if I go do this, I'm driving 20 minutes in the morning. It's time with you. I can listen to sermons. I mean, I have devoured so many theological podcasts since I've been going the past like 5 or so years that it's helped. But my point is, it's not wrong to defend people. If you're a bully in the pulpit, it's the same as being a bully in jiu-jitsu. It's the wrong mindset. So anyone that doesn't understand what jiu-jitsu is, go do it and you'll see. In our gym, if you're a meathead, you wouldn't even be in the gym. Right. How can a blue belt pick on a white belt if, like, he's meant to be an example?
Yeah.
Yes, you know, we mutually roll. If you're going to catch me, I'm like, oh, man, you got me. It's not violent, though.
It's not violent.
Yeah.
We started training, and my buddy told me, he says, we train, we learn how to fight so we don't have to fight.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that right away. And he would tell Cam that all the time. Look, he goes, it's the coward that somebody insults him and he gets this built up in
puffed
him,
up.
and he thinks that he has to beat this guy up to prove something. But the real guy is the guy that goes, dude, I'm gonna keep. It's cool. Don't worry about it. I'll see you later, man. And if he has to, then he's gonna take care of business. And people don't grasp that concept,
The mindset.
of and I tell people, even with, I'm a big Second Amendment guy too, a gun guy.
Yeah.
And so people always ask me about that. Well, how can you be a Christian and be a gun guy? And I said, well, didn't Jesus say grab your sword?
Yeah.
And I go, he wasn't trying to grab it so they can go wailing around and scare people. But hey, I'm ready.
Yeah.
If I need to, we're gonna be evangelizing in certain towns, and we're gonna be on certain roads.
Say, hey, leave us alone. We don't want any.
It might not be safe.
And you want to go further with this guy? Look up Dr. Michael Heiser. He's a Hebrew scholar. He knows as much as anyone. Listen, high-level scholars generally don't even get involved in most pulpit preaching because they are just off nerding out, writing 600s, 1,000. And he makes the point, okay, to what degree are you turning your cheek? If a guy walked in right now and said, can you stop speaking? I'm going to take your TV. I'm going to take this. I'm going to take the camera. Are you turning the cheek there? To the guy in your work who totally decimates everything about your life, what point are you standing up for just what's right? And I'm not saying, believe me, I don't care about most of the stuff in my life, but I'm not going to go out and start swinging on people, getting crazy. But you look at Romans 13, the idea is you're submitted to a government that's aiming to honor God. Because, I mean, what about Rahab the prostitute? What about people that hid? What about the disciples even fleeing? Technically, if it was a law you couldn't meet, how do you deal with Hebrews when it says, don't forsake gathering together? Again, the point isn't when you asked your friend, about violence. There's nothing in me that wants to be violent. But I remember probably 2 years ago coming out of Albertsons, I had a chai. There's a guy in a red truck screaming his head off. And he must have been like 25, screaming his head off at this woman. Bleeping this, I won't even say the words, vulgar words. And this is like around Christmas. And I just turn around and I just put my chai on top of the car. My wife's like, babe, no. Because I'm always like, this is not how you treat a woman or whatever. And and so as I'm saying it.
Here comes up to Liverpool.
Yeah, so he just turned around and he's like, what do you want? And it was like a sister or someone. He starts going off on me, he's swearing. And I'm just like, and he was getting so close to me. I'm like, am I going to have to defend myself? And I just said, do you know who I am? And I'm not saying Brian. I just said, do you know who you're shouting at? And I said, do you know what I do? And he's like, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. And I go, but if you thought about what I do? And I'm like, do you know what I could do to you? And I wasn't saying anything. It was the whole art of fighting without fighting.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll fight right now. I'm like, I'm not talking. And it was just became, and then a cop comes over, grabs the guy, puts him on the floor. But I'm saying, even in that midst, I was like, my go-to wasn't, I know jiu-jitsu, I'm going to go beat this guy up. It was like, dude, just think, and it was the philosophy. Do you know who I am? I could be a cop. Do you know what I do? What if I was a professional fighter? Do you know this? And I'm like, dude, you're in the street. I mean, the words he was saying.
Especially in this day and age.
Well, now people are just ready to go.
Right.
You lost your job, your wife bailed, you got the vid, as you're saying.
Yeah.
So it's rowdy, it's crazy, but jiu-jitsu, you said, did it change your life? Yeah, it's fun, it's calming, it's another routine in my week,
but it's frustrating too.
Oh, you mean rolling?
I mean, I'll come home,
yeah,
and
when you get submitted by people,
my wife, she's not a big cusser, but she'll say, "Did you get your ass handed to you?"
Oh no,
right? And she knows I'm walking in the house and I'm thrashed. I'm 46, man. I'm trying to roll with some young guys.
These 20-year-old wrestlers got no grace.
They're just mean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just mean guys.
They just see the belt and they want to submit you.
Yeah, and then you get a higher belt, right? And then it's just over for you, really. So I walk in and she's just like, how'd it go? And I was like, oh. And you just come down.
She's like, I'll get the blue belt out for you. You're demoted. Yeah.
I think you said this too about just showing up.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I think just showing up, and that's the key, I think, to anything, right? Mm-hmm. Jiu-jitsu especially, and that's what it's taught me, you have to show up.
Yeah.
You're going to get beat up. You're going to get sore. Somebody's going to hurt you, whether it's your feelings, your arm, or just get you. But if you come back the next day, and that's what I tell a lot of new guys that come. If you come back the next day, you're going to get better. Mm-hmm. And you might have a good day tomorrow. Don't look at, did I sub this guy? Look, did I escape? Look, did I survive an extra minute longer? Or got a workout,
or hung out, or whatever.
Whatever it may be.
I'm not competitive like that. Skateboarding isn't go beat people and be the best. I was like, I just want to be in America.
You think it was more of an individual sport?
It is,
right?
because you go play baseball, you better all give your all, because if you drop the ball, it's you.
Right.
But jiu-jitsu is only you. So you show up to the tournament that day, you're not thinking right. You might lose because of your mindset, but you've got to deal with it. And that's the whole vehicle mindset. So for me, and the problem is that I'm 240, so if I roll with anyone, even at a higher belt, I should be getting advantages. So I'm just so passive. And I also noticed I'm more pastoral. I want to I learn by you doing stuff to me and realizing, okay, wait, this is what I learn by dissecting it. Where a lot of times now as I'm hitting purple, it's like, okay, you need to start just smashing people. And for those listening, if it's grandma so-and-so, you're not getting your nose broke or punched in the face. This is just grappling, you know, as they said, jiu-jitsu is just folding clothes with people in them. I mean, the second you feel it, you tap. You rarely get hit unless you're rolling with someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Right. You know, and
it's the gentle art.
Yeah.
And I tell people, if it's the most effective thing to learn. Yeah. You learn it, you show up every day. I mean, it is very parallel to being a Christian. Yeah. You know, show up every day.
Well, and that was the video you said, because my son who's here, you know, when I got a blue belt, they're like, well, you're only a blue belt because, you know, you just kept showing up. And I go, you know what? That's profound. Because I kept showing up and did the technique and got the sweat and the workout in, I progressed. And that's life. You know, it rains on the just and the unjust. Whatever you're going through, wake up each day. I mean, the people you talk to that are depressed, suicidal, hating life, you don't get to take your life because God gave you breath for a reason. That means every day your Ephesians 2:10 is workmanship. So if you have a gi on that day, get on the mats and roll. As you wake up as a believer, Lord, what do you want to do in my life? Today for me, it was this morning running around a bunch, meeting, coming and skating, hanging out with you, take Jude skating tonight, and then tomorrow is a whole new Ephesians 2:10, and all of it's gospel aimed. I'm going to try and roll tomorrow because I just need before Christmas gets hectic, so...
Get some of that 240 down.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I mean, you were smashing on people, dude.
I know, I'm firm. It's not this going to be a while.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah. And all the soccer gave me the big legs, which is going to take a while. Yeah.
Well, I'll show you my little pet move after the podcast, man. Those soccer legs probably help watch.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you. Yeah. Now, I was the state of the church. Yeah. And I have, I've been... I know a lot of people out there. You know, what's funny about the podcast is I think people thought I've went in a lot of different areas in the podcast. We had a police officer here. We had a history teacher here. I've had fighters. I've had you. Yeah. And it's just a good mix of people. You know, I had a friend of mine come through. I had an ex-gang member that became a lawyer come through, which is amazing, right? So different things, but... I think a lot of people thought I was going to be focused, and I'm very outspoken on a lot of things going on in this nation.
Of course.
As a believer, you get kind of torn on speaking out about the nation sometimes and saying, hey, the U.S., this, and this is going on. And then I always feel like I get distracted a little bit with just focusing on the U.S., and then I don't even talk to anybody about the gospel, about the answer.
And you're saying personally, you're just like, man, I'm fired up to protect what's going on and I see in the nation. Right. That not that Jesus is second, you're not like that church, oh, suck my first love, but it doesn't always become the center in that conversation, that moment.
And so I was thinking, you know, I know you're philosophical, theologian, thinker, but where should we land in that position? Is it somewhere in the middle of those two things? Or should we just be so focused? I had one of my favorite all-time guys. You got to hear this podcast. Billy Hall comes in, and he's just Jesus. Jesus. He challenged me to read my Bible 3 times a day. Sends me a text with a whole thing about that chapter. And I'm going through it with him, right? Yeah. And a friend of mine hits me up and he goes, man, that was a really good podcast. He goes, what do you think Billy Hall thinks? And I didn't ask him. Yeah. I just...
Afterthought, yeah.
He goes, what do you think Billy Hall thinks about what's going on in the United States right now? And I told him, I go, I don't think he thinks about that. He's so gospel-minded, in prayer,
but not off in a land where he's just like a monk. He's living amidst the people.
This guy gets it. I mean, he's a Vietnam veteran. Had life sentence, missionary to Ethiopia, had cancer, and he has all these things. But I told my buddy, I go, I don't think he thinks like me and you.
Yeah.
He's so focused.
He's not
on
waiting for the guy to come in the window right now
No.
and shout something contrary to the party you voted for, and it all goes up in flames.
Right.
Yeah.
He's more concerned is that guy saved that's coming through the window. How can I witness him? Yeah,
Yeah.
he can probably kill him.
So
with
you're
his
thinking,
bare
how
hands.
do you summarize? How do you keep it all focused on?
How do you? I mean, where,
Yeah.
in your opinion, where as believers
Yeah.
should we lie in those two realms there?
Well, think about this, right? And this is, again, I've never really talked about the philosophy behind everything. Like I know I have probably 30 of Bruce's books back in the day. I don't say it now because was Bruce a believer or not? I don't think he was. I'd like to think he was. Same as like with Elvis and that someone preached to them and whatever. But I would say you have to just look. Let's go to the start. This rabbi shows up 2,000 years ago, and he's the Messiah, and he's fulfilling, Genesis 3, Zechariah 9:9. Here he is. He's showing up. You have to realize in Israel in that day, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, he got along with a lot of them. I mean, he actually went and hung out with a lot of them 3.5 years. It always comes across negative, but based on if you understand the Sadducees, the Pharisees, some were actually trying to figure out who he was, but some were like mafia, and people don't realize this. The guards who came and took him by night, they said there were 7 to 10 families that ran the region who were not taking care of Israel, not taking care of God's people. So when he says things like they were like sheep without shepherd, he is the shepherd, but Israel wasn't doing what it was meant to be doing as far as the leaders. So here comes Jesus, born of a virgin, divine, God incarnate, and what does he do? He is a rabbi. We lose that. We read Rabboni and we say, oh, what does that mean? He was a teacher. He picked his 3 that are generally the 3 who take over from you. And there was, they were on the Mount of Transfiguration. They were in the garden with him. And then he had his rest of his disciples. But you see this picture, and here's generally what my message always comes down to. He shows up to 4 fishermen. Follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. We all want to follow him, we say. But do we want to fish for men? He shows them for 3.5 years how to follow. He's following God.
Wait, can you be separate on those two things?
You can't.
They're
you can't.
together, right?
It's one, because you can want to go to heaven but not care about Jesus.
Love God, love people.
That's everything. Okay. This is everything. Right. So he now shows you for 3.5 years, and we often miss this. We know it. You definitely know what I'm going to say. I do what I see the Father doing. Where Jesus, he's the second person of the Trinity. He's following God's lead intentionally. Right. He's like, how do I do this, God? He's intentionally chose to submit himself as a man, to walk as a man, fully divine, fully man unto God. Guys, I want you to follow him fish. Simon, Andrew, Peter, James, and John, he calls us all fishermen. They leave their business. They leave their Father's business. Here we go. Following Jesus as he follows the Father, fishing for men. Then as he does this, he dies, resurrects. We've seen all of this following and fishing. He shows up again, and he tells them the exact same thing. Here's Jesus. He's got wounds in his hands. Okay, all authority's been given to me. Jesus, what should we do? Guys, I'm going to tell you something kind of crazy. I want you now to go. What do you mean go? I want you to keep following and keep fishing. What do I mean by this? When I go speak at a rehab, follow and fish. When your marriage sucks, follow and fish. Right. When you're in jiu-jitsu, follow and fish. When it's Trump or Biden, follow and fish. So what I mean by that is, how do you get out of your addictions? By living the Great Commission. Let's say you're about a podcast and your wife couldn't care less and she's off doing whatever in the world. Your marriage isn't going to be good because she's not following and fishing. Let's say your podcast is about vile and vulgar things and your wife's sold out for Jesus. You know what I mean? So I'm saying, it sounds so practical, but he's a rabbi and we are raised up. And it's amazing. When you hear him called a fisher of men, that's a term for rabbis. If a rabbi came to the skate park today, this great skater, or you got, like a Nick Diaz statue over here, if Nick walked into the gym, he's going to catch people's attention because of his experience. If GSP shows up, if Marcus Buchetz or Marcelo Garcia, if these people show up, if you're like want to know about England and Brian shows up, I can help you. So Jesus was a fisher of men. They followed him, and there was this saying in the day, may you be covered by the dust of your rabbi. May I so follow Nick Diaz or your professor or your son as a white belt follow you as a purple, that you mirror their teaching. And now here's what happens. Jesus shows up, and when they say, what is the greatest teaching? They said that to everyone. You and me show up into a town, and we're speakers, and they go, what's your teaching? They did that to everyone. You always gave the first same teaching. Love the Lord your God with heart, soul, mind. That's how we know we're Hebrew. but the second changed. Some would say it's about the Sabbath. Some would say it's honor your parents. But Jesus said it's loving your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
And following him, loving the Lord your God with heart, soul, mind. Fishing for men is loving your neighbor. It's the same thing. And so when people say, why did Jesus only give us 2 commandments? Because the 10 commandments are only 2 commandments.
Right.
The first 6 are loving God. I mean, the
follow
first
those
4,
2,
they're the
you're
vertical
doing all.
ones. And so when you go to how do you process this in the nation, and we've talked about this a little bit even earlier, but I'll go on a bike ride, Huntington last week. I'm about to preach at that church in LA. Go on a bike ride, 400 people at the pier. A lot of them Christians. A lot of them, God, nation, guns, and all this stuff. Do you have guns because you're afraid someone's going to come and take what you think is yours, and you're about this nation? It's great to be about the nation, but imagine if you took 1% of that and your goal was to go to the nations. And those people were there from 12 in the afternoon to 12 at night because they hate Gavin Newsom. And I get it. Newsom.
Great people.
Yeah, great people.
But they never outreached for Jesus.
Well, Jesus didn't leave us here to build this kingdom. And I'll say this. I heard a guy recently, and it was a young kid, and he was awesome. He loves the Lord. But I think if you don't have a grounded theology on Genesis, that we're fallen and God's plan is redemptive, you kind of get missed. And what I mean by this is, he said, look, we are called to go and make disciples. You're right. But I'm not meant to disciple the world. If you want to go and talk against abortion, which you should because it is killing babies, it's not pro-life,
right.
It's pro-death. That thing is already alive. You are making the choice to kill something. But if you want to go talk about that, you should also go into Starbucks and tell people, you should all stop lying. You should also stop cussing.
Right.
So we need to put it out there. We need to evidence the kingdom. But a lot of what the kid was saying, I don't remember who it was. It was a quick clip, and it just showed up on my wall. But my point is, he can be so about the nation, but God's really the driving force that I don't know what it's about. And here's an example. Let's say this podcast blows up. You and me go in together. It blows up. It's bigger than, Howard Stern or Joe Rogan. God could have been done with this 2 years ago, but you and me are so bound to the system each day because there's more likes, there's more followers, there's more whatever that we're like, look what I'm doing for the kingdom. And I'm not going to make people now trip out and be like, don't do anything that's successful. But the biggest hindrance to God's ministry is my ministry. Because I would have been great back then to be like, I'm a natural evangelist. I'm going to go build all this stuff. Like, yes, I have a podcast. Yes, I put a book out. Yes, I do things. But I try and just be like, Lord, just give me enough each day. So if my goal is to save America from the left or the right or whatever you want to say, I'm kind of fighting for that kingdom, as opposed to if you want a gun, it's your right. If you want to punch someone when they try and punch you, that's your right. And I thought about it like this. If I was in the street, here's my wife, someone came over, grabbed hold of her, am I willing to take their hand off him? I am. If they're going to punch her in the face, am I willing to punch the guy in the face? I am. If they pull a knife out to stab someone, I'll take the knife off and I'll probably stab him. And if he pulls out a gun, am I willing to shoot him? I am. So at that stage, I'm for the Second Amendment. That's life. Someone came through your window right now. My son's sitting here, your son. I'm going to tackle someone and probably die and be on the TV because he was brave. But I'm not going to go and I'll die for my faith. But I'm just going to let people take advantage of me for the sake of it. Right. So I would say, back to the point, and I wanted to make a lot of points in there, you can become so focused on the nation. Sometimes it can be out of fear. But sometimes it can just be because, we have a great heritage of nation. And here's the thing, let's be real. Some people hate Trump, and regardless who you voted for, I think most people would rather be around a crowd of Trump supporters than people who want to smash the city up and ban stuff. Because I've seen protests, and I've seen where you feel like it's about to get violent. And I've seen massive Trump protests where they're down Huntington, and you have every ethnicity, and people just want you to be able to keep your house and have your job and raise your family.
Doesn't that what it boils down to?
That's what it boils down to most people. That's it.
Money in your pocket and some security.
Well, you're 46. Dude, you might want to be super liberal, rowdy when you're young and wound up. But when you suddenly have a mortgage, you have a kid, you have dreams for your grandkids. Listen.
The rage against the machine goes out the window.
Once you get to a certain age, because look at this. Anyone that's racist, you are an idiot. We are made in God's image. Let's just condemn that right now. You're an idiot. We all have the same color blood, but made in his image. everyone should be celebrated. You know, there's just different things about ethnicities, and we are different. You know, I'm English. Like your background is Mexican, so then you're gonna have friends who are black or whatever. When you go to the skate park, you don't see this at all. You don't see in the gym. You don't see it at all. I wish someone would make one of those wildlife shows where they pull up to the gym. Maybe someone will do this. Just tag me in it. It's free. Do it. You pull up to the gym or pull up to the skate park, and it's all slow with like a David Attenborough voice, you know, narrated. Right. If you look real close, and there's the grass moving in the breeze, or the mats are tying in the belt. You know, I'm getting all production in my mind. And then you see like a bigger guy like me who's very white. And then you see like this guy or that guy. And you see them all. And you go, but if you look real close, they all get along and they all don't care. And then you show skaters and they got baggy pants or tight pants and hairs and piercing. And it's like, I get the systemic idea. I get that there's a bias in people's thinking. But I think most of that is actually in politicians' minds.
Right.
You don't see that in the skate park to the extent that even if they call each other names, they would know they're just being idiots who are mad that day. Right. And I say that because I think what people want now is just for everything to be left alone and you can just live your life and be hardworking. But 2 Corinthians 4:4 says Satan's the god of this world, and there is an agenda there. There's something going on that, you know, the Antichrist spirit, whether you say it's an Antichrist person, I get it, but there is biblically an Antichrist spirit that's opposed to God. So breaking all this down, that is moving. Satan doesn't have any grace or mercy. He hates you, hates me, hates the podcast, hates that Jiu-Jitsu is going to be used for skating. He wants to just smear everything. Right. So, but you just got to bring it back to Jesus. Who is that person in front of you? If you're talking about the nation, God doesn't need America. You know, it's about his kingdom. We should be in it. But I say that because, and we've talked about this a little bit joking, but imagine if a vaccine goes around the world before the gospel does. Yeah. Imagine if a political agenda, that though it could help if it was that radical, we're not seeing the numbers they projected. We're not seeing, you know, this crazy cause for it. Right. My buddy Tim Rogers, he's I think a 2 or 3 stripe black belt, as gyms over in China. I said, how is COVID over there? Someone had said, this is almost gone in China. I just thought I'll message him right to the source. White guy, you know, wife, bunch of kids. How is it? He goes, it's almost non-existent. No one's really wearing masks. You don't even hear about it anymore. And I was like, what?
It's funny you said that. My wife asked me about that today. Yeah. In China, this is not going on anymore?
In Wuhan or whatever it is, they had a water park open where they said 10,000 people have already been.
Concerts, everything.
But my point is, how do you go from people being locked up, almost padlocked up, people like vibrating on the floor, like where it was weird when it first came out, like to like this? Because if it was that crazy here in Walmart with a bunch of people like eyes rolling back and everything on the
legend.
Street. Yeah, I'm just saying this, you know, it's politicized. There's an agenda. The only thing that's been the same with both parties is they're both for a vaccine. They're both for, and any, we talked about this, any conspiracy book you look up, they've always been a goal to whenever a great travesty comes into play, like a virus or an attack on a nation, steer it for your benefit. And whether these people realize it or not, which I think they do, I think your world leaders are still doing what they did in the Old Testament. They're still, you know, America's a Christian nation. Okay, well, where's the monuments that were originally Christian? We spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars importing obelisks and Ashereth poles and all this stuff from Egypt, and we set them up around America in places that are very geographic for a reason, and there's a reason why there's the occult practices that are seen in our music, seen in our films. So Satan knows what he's doing.
This guy goes deep, Cam.
I'm just saying, you know, we haven't even started if we want to go crazy.
We're talking about philosophical here. So we got to lie somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
We got to.
Well, it doesn't change my day.
We got to. Yeah.
What did it change about where I'm eating tonight, hanging out with you, if we roll?
Yeah.
Now, if I look, let's just get crazy. The Bible says the power of life is in the blood. There's something about the blood. What does that mean? So much so that God said in Genesis, his blood is crying out to me. That later on, thousands of years, the Bible says about Jesus, his blood speaks a better word. So in Genesis, the blood was saying guilty, shame, death, judgment. In the New Testament, Jesus is saying innocence, freedom, eternal. So you want to talk about a conspiracy to do with supposed blood in Hollywood and all this stuff? I'm like, I could believe it, but God doesn't need me to know. He didn't tell me.
Right.
What I do like about what's happening in Hollywood is a lot of these people who get to speak into our lives because they make good beats or make cool films, they just kind of got shut down. Like, some of you didn't graduate school. Some of you don't care about what I'm doing in my life. I'm not saying you got to graduate school, but I'm saying some of these people have been on a film set for 30 years. I have no idea what it's like to go and earn a wage. Don't know what it's like to have to work to provide for grandma. And you're going to just preach to everyone. Like, not that I did all this stuff, but I had to come over here at 15, 16.
Right.
I've got skin in the game.
You got you got a way better grasp of reality.
And people who are out there.
Right.
I've been almost every country in the world. I'm around all these people. I go preach in all these different churches. And that was one of the things you'd said earlier, maybe, is, you know, what do we need in this nation? How do we approach it as Christians? That's kind of what you were saying as well, right? Like, what does the church need to be doing? I mean, so do you want to unpack a question like that, or
I want to unpack.
Yeah.
Along,
that triggers a couple thoughts,
along those lines.
Yeah.
Where did you stand when churches just shut the doors?
Yeah.
And I get it.
Yeah.
First month or two.
Yeah.
And then it got hairy with the riots and all, you know.
Yeah.
All that stuff, and then the protesting. And I called one of my friends, a pastor.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, we had pastors that took a knee to prove a point, and I was like, look, man, you're bowing down, or you're protesting.
Yeah.
You're involving the church in things. You know, we had a lot of young people that were out there protesting, and hey, protesting is a right in America. I'm all for it. Yeah. My thing was we were talking about believers that were getting on that bandwagon, and I saw young kids that were holding signs and doing things, and I thought to myself, they never really even went on an outreach or passed out a flyer to somebody. See, Jesus loves you, or held the sign saying. So even if you change culture, he's coming back. They're not going to the kingdom of God. Right. Even if you do the great, and we've made this point before. If Mother Teresa did all that she did, or as Bono had donated millions to all these causes, if all those people are served meals and protected from horrible things like rape or abuse, at the end of the day, if they didn't hear the gospel, it was temporary, and eventually it's in vain. Right. Yeah. It's a lot. My friend Mike came and he said the same thing. He's like, what good am I? I can feed everybody. The gospel is the power of salvation. It's in word and deed. Yeah. I can feed everybody. Yeah. And it's a great deed. I'm giving them great things. I'm providing backpacks to kids. But a lot of people are doing great things in the name of Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, Muslim, atheism. A lot of people are doing good things, but it's not always the gospel. But the soul. Yeah, the soul. That's the only thing. The soul. That only thing that matters. So your point was then... My point, did the church... Yeah. You know, taking a knee, shutting the doors... Yeah. And now a lot of churches came out of that, right? They just realized, like, this is not right. Yeah. But right away, and a lot of people laughed at me because I said, hey, a lot of our rights are being infringed upon. Dude, calm down. Yeah. You know, they just... You're wearing a mask. 2 weeks. Yeah. You know what? We'll just do what they tell us to do. And I was like, no. Listen. Yeah. You know, they're telling us we can't go to church. That's weird. Yeah. And then the protests on Hollywood Boulevard, it's fine. So where did I sit? Where did I vote on these thoughts? Or what is it? What, do you think the church kind of just said it was a little? I mean, maybe it's because we're Americanized churches. You know, we're not these I got underground. On it all. Yeah. But do you think we really like bowed down super fast and just gave in super fast? I think when the chief police the first are told you better take a knee, and the one guy on the East Coast or Minnesota did it, I think he was doing it to say I care for black people, and I totally appreciate that he did that. Right. Did he know there would be this whole back that now you and me are going to go research, and you're going to get, you know, if we were all pro this and that on the thing, people would send us all the information that they followed, where the funding goes, what party it is, the political agenda, almost the reverse racism. I think a lot of people did things with integrity, and I'm very gracious when it comes to all that. But I think, people... There's a very social gospel right now, and I don't know how much you've heard that term. Well, I got one for that. Yeah. Progressive Christianity. So I mean, Alyssa Childers or John MacArthur said this is the most dangerous thing to the American church in the past 3 years. He heard about it 3 years ago. It's the most radical thing. So here's the problem, is you're saying you can't meet in church,
You're telling everyone they've got to wear a mask. Like you said, they projected numbers in the millions.
Yeah.
This will be worse than the Spanish flu. It'll be this, 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 this. So John MacArthur says, okay, well, I'm going to keep preaching, and the doors are going to be open, and you've projected this many numbers, but now 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, 2 months in, 3 months in, they're not the numbers, and the numbers aren't adding up.
Right.
And your own leaders, I mean, you had Nancy Pelosi and all these people in the beginning saying things like, we're down here in Chinatown and we're fine and we're not wearing masks. And you never see those videos now. You had people saying, and it was like they were saying enough things that they could play them later. They got the footage early on. And then obviously Trump comes out and says, hey, we're going to fight this. We're going to do this. I believe he was trying to do the right thing the whole time. I believe a lot of what was on television was inflated and people kind of trying to set him up.
Crazy.
And whether they're for Trump or not, you could see there's an agenda to take him down.
Right.
I mean, if they're for the virus, no one's brought up that he's one who threw millions and millions, billions of dollars into getting it done. But the church came out, and this is what actually made me frustrated. A lot of pastors, especially in Orange County, who were very progressive, they went to church on Sunday and they shamed the church. They made white people, and if you have a problem with white people, you're just as racist as anyone. And I get what happened with slaves. Black people had black slaves. White people were slaves. We only had 3% of all the African-American slaves around the world, and it was horrible. And we've got to get past all that, you know.
Right.
I don't refer to myself as English-American because it sounds ridiculous. Things didn't happen to me. But in this whole season, you had a lot of pastors who were shaming everyone in the church. They would have minority speakers come in and they wouldn't talk about Jesus. And so you stirred up within the church this social focus. I had a lot of friends who showed their children, 5-year-old children, the George Floyd video. Yeah. I'm like, if you want to tell them that, you can't just explain. You have to visually have them watch this thing, and whether it's as accurate as not, and the footage they showed us, all the rest. But I think the church kind of missed the point there. And what I would have done as a pastor is I would have said, hey, we're going to honor this for a small amount of time and see. Because here's my point. I see a woman today driving in a car with a mask on, and in my mind, I'm like, what is she doing? Like, there's no one in the car with you. But now if I'm going to go into a supermarket where there's 1,500 people and shout, you're all idiots for no masks, and someone in there dies, and maybe it's not even of COVID, but it's just they think it is,
right?
What's my witness? I'm not God. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to be as respectful as I can. But shutting the church down, the early church was persecuted. They weren't allowed to meet, so we can expect that in the near future anyway.
Right.
It's an American right, but I don't think pastors should have shut the doors the way they did. They should have done it. I think the church needs to be more together on this. Give it 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, still meet, still gather. And then now where we are, I don't know why everything's not open again. To that state that I'm just like, I just think too many pastors didn't even really care about this stuff. I like what John MacArthur did. He said, I just kept preaching. They showed up. No one got sick. No one talks about the flu. They're ascribing, COVID to everything now. And they said the numbers don't line up. So now we've got a massive either conspiracy or a politicized weapon, and we don't know.
Right.
So I think it became, I'm not going to go be so pro the nation that I'm rude to everyone that wears a mask, but I'm also not going to go cough on all these people, like whatever. Like I roll at jiu-jitsu and don't really care because I'm like, I'm young, I'm strong, I'm healthy. I don't think I'm going to catch something off someone. And the people that have known it, my wife's brother has kidney failure for 12 years. He had COVID for 2 weeks. He's fine. Living in a house with her mom who's pretty much dying of ALS. So I know there's people that are out there and things have happened, but I think the church got very political.
And if you wanted to stay home, stay home.
Well, I'm going to, if I came over your house and you said, hey, man, my grandma's in there and she's actually really sick, so we're just honoring masks. And I come in and go, of course. You want me to show up. And now if you came in the room and said, hey, she's really worried and crazy, I don't believe that, I'd be like, whatever, you're fine. Yeah. I'm going to honor people like that much. But when you say I can't worship, I can't gather, I can't be the church, no. God says don't forbid gathering. But here's the thing again, and someone made this point. I have a couple friends, and they got really radical lately, and every post would be like, pastors are spineless, and they're this, and they're this. And it was more just like about them being rowdy. And I go, well, wait a minute. You're just at home, like working out with your wife, just going on about what you did 15 years ago, shouting at the pastor. And I go, a lot of those guys are my friends. Yeah. A lot of those guys dealing with 7-year-old women who are watching things on fire on TV, and they're bummed and they're afraid and they're thinking COVID's going to get them. So there's a massive amount of things that you're joking. If Greg Laurie fights the whole nation, the church gets shut down, they'll keep meeting. But what is a 50 old women in that church that don't get to meet at all now
Right.
with regulations. And I go, this is something for each church, but you need to be able to meet together with some people. If it was this bad, people would be, I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
And here's the other thing. Let's be real, guys, if you're totally opposed to what I'm saying. Nancy Pelosi was getting her hair done. Gavin Newsom was sitting. I mean, every day these photos come out. If I really believed it was wiping people out, you know what? My son wouldn't be here.
Right.
And I wouldn't be at the skate park today. And nothing changed about what Newsom did. Nothing changed about Pelosi. Nothing changed about the politicians. So and here's the thing, God is allowing us to see that. That's where I sit with it. I voted how I felt like I should vote. I'm very pro-life. I'm pro the church meeting. I'm pro everyone's rights. Let's just go really crazy. Even with all this culture and everyone's supposed to be homophobic or trans this and trans that, whatever you are, it is better for you that I'm a Christian because I'm called to love everyone.
That's what I tell people with the church and the First Amendment, and they're like, oh, you know, the church should shut down, and I'm not fighting just for the Christian church.
It's for everyone who's an unbeliever as well. Yeah, for whatever it is.
For every church, you know, if it's Catholic church, it's your synagogue, it's your temple. That's what we all fall under. I was always taught, hey, if you are, you know, my mom used to say, we don't want their rights to be taken away, because then, I mean, our rights will be taken away.
You have the right to lie. You have the right to steal. You have the right to do whatever, and there's consequences, but I don't get to go out and police everyone.
Yeah.
I'm called to love everyone to the best of my ability, so for anyone, it's better that I'm a Christian.
Right.
I think there's a lot of straw men out there that are being politicized to tweak and invert people to fight each other, and I think that's what the church should be looking like. Because I've seen, and you mentioned the progressive movement, I've seen a lot of people who will go and defend certain people while they will attack and hate the church.
I hate that.
And it's so crazy because what you're doing is you're not actually addressing with certain people who are in certain groups what the word says. And now this whole term, you know, Christianese, so if you talk the Bible, it's very Christianese. Like, what are you talking about? It's God's word.
Right.
Like what are we? Yeah.
I always feel like it's an easy fight, right? When I see a lot of Christians attacking us. I didn't attack the church, you know. I was kind of like, you know, if you want to shut down, shut down. I don't agree with it. There were certain organizations people got behind, and I was like, please do your research on those organizations before you start backing them more than you back the gospel.
I want every black person, every minority, whatever you say to feel like whoever we supposedly are all in this together. That's as much as we're all in this together. That's how I feel.
And I had called my pastor friend. I said, are you doing this stuff? He says, no, I'm not doing that stuff. And we laughed about, what we laughed about is how the church was, I was, you know, there were some churches that were saying, well, we got to do this for these people and do this for the, and I was like, what were you doing before that?
Yeah.
Like, we were supposed to be loving
alive anyway.
We were supposed to be loving them. We were supposed to be feeding them. We were supposed to be ministering to them. Now we got to, like, we're making it a show now to say that things that we should have been doing.
And even for our church, you know, because we were renting a space, I love what our pastor did. You're going to go buy a property in Huntington Beach. You're going to be paying that for the rest of your life, you know. So when our church was planted a few years ago out of Rock Harbor, they just rented a space in this beautiful senior center. They gave it to us first. So now COVID hits, you and me are the pastors per se. Well, there's all these old people going to the senior center. You can't use that space. So they just said, hey, we'll video in. They had a space where they met. They had a team. They had all this stuff. And they said, we're going to be meeting as soon as we can. There wasn't this rebellious attitude. But there was a lot of people who were like, we're actually afraid to meet. And so you can't go into each one of their houses, call them all whatever you want to, and be like, you know, get over it. This is America.
Right.
They have real emotions. I mean, I posted a video the other day to say, guys, please pay attention to just the psychology of this. There was a family walking through like a supermarket, with Target or Walmart with a full-on plastic bags, the dad, the mom, and the kids. And now we go, man, that's crazy. Yeah, but those kids are walking around the supermarket. They're going to feel something. Those parents had conversations. This is the effect of this agenda. That's, you know how much fear is in that house? And the dad's like, I'm not wearing this stuff. And the mom's like, you better wear it. And like, that's who we want to love on regardless of where they are. Not if they're pro this or pro that. I mean, as far as who they voted for or whatever. Yeah. And I just think who's in front of you, be loving, be respectful.
What we're supposed to be doing.
Well, I'm not wearing a mask right now, but if I go out and someone starts coughing on me, I'm like, bro, like, let's be smart. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I want to be respectful to the degree that the numbers didn't hit like they said. The other nations that had them, things went back. There is an agenda with this vaccine. I already believe there's an occult setup in this nation based around who the Satan, to put it in its Hebrew in the Genesis was, the serpent that Jesus talked about. There's an Antichrist spirit, yeah. But so what is all the Christians going to do when this Antichrist spirit rises up? Be like, it's my right. Like, he's going to be opposed to you.
Yeah.
People's heads are going to roll in Matthew 24. And if you're contrary to that, and we joked about this, even earlier, if you are so pro-rapture, think about it, the end will not come, Matthew 24, till the gospel goes everywhere. So if you want the rapture to happen, if you believe in one, some do, some don't, or you want the end to come where he returns back, go witness to everyone. And he says when he comes back, will he find faith? If we're all living in fear, is he coming back for you then?
It's so wild, and I tell people that all the time too. I said you get so worried, but there's a lot of things that we have to remember. In the last days, I will pour out my spirit.
Yeah,
and I said, well, what do you think about that? Are we believing that? Like he wants to pour out his spirit in these last days, and we're getting so consumed about what's on the news and what's in front. It's a very hard balance. I think for a lot of a lot of believers, you get a little upset.
But a lot of people aren't dependent. Here's the thing. I fully believe the Spirit's at work. I think the Lord used all these images. I think the Lord used you in the way he does. I think he uses Jiu-Jitsu. I think he used me to write that book. I think he's speaking through us. But do we really need the Holy Spirit right now in our culture the way they had him in the book of Acts? I get that he was on the apostles in a mighty and powerful way. He did radical things for 30 years that we don't see in the same way, even though I believe he can do it. Just nowadays, everyone wants to YouTube it and make it about them and their magic and all the rest. But I don't think we even really see the Spirit in a way. And when Jesus says, Peter, he'll pour out his Spirit in all flesh, quoting Joel, the Spirit came. He's been present ever since. And I think people are going to have to really learn to depend on him more if people are still here in that season. Because even if you said, Brian, are you a pre-trib guy? I'd be like, man, if I was to say I believe there's a rapture, I'd say it looks more mid-trib, because I think the first 3.5 years are kind of a demonic blindness where the world's buying this stuff. And then based on 2 Thessalonians, I think the church is out of here and whatever. But if I was a more post-mill guy who says, I believe I'm going to be here the whole time, I'm like, whatever's going to happen, Lord, you're with me.
You're in control.
He's my dad.
Yeah.
Like, do you think if anything happened right now to our two sons sitting here, we'd stay on the microphones like, we love doing this, but this is more important.
Right.
And he's made that promise to us. And here's something people need to hear. I said this to the church on Sunday, and I try and just encourage Christians. If Jesus was in this room right now, yes, he is. But if he was visually here, which he's not going to show up, we're going to see him again in glory. If he was right here, I would be the most confident person on the planet. I mean, so would you. Jesus is sitting right here. Guys, I'm for the podcast go. We're like,
what now?
Just do whatever. Oh, we're on the match rolling. Get me a couple red belts. Marcus Buccetti, Leandro Lowe, some of those black belts. We're good. Jesus said, it's better that I leave. It's better that I'm not here. I'm going to send someone else. So Jesus, if Jesus was you and me right now, you want to go to Afghanistan tomorrow? Let's go. I don't need a gun. He says it's better that he leaves so he can send the Holy Spirit. So we have something not better in Jesus in that sense, but we have all that we need. Now, either I believe that or not.
Right. That's
how the Holy Spirit needs to walk with you in this time, in this season. He's coming back people full of faith. Trust him. Look, guys, if I text you today and said, man, I got COVID, you'd be like, oh, did we get it? It's not that it's fear. You're like, are we being smart enough? Now, if we don't see it's that crazy, it's just not playing out the way they said. So we're just trying to make sense of it. And, is this stuff going to matter in 5 years? Depending where we are, no, probably not. But we should be able to have faith. We're going to go skate, take my son to eat, roll out the weekend. That's it.
Have some fun.
Like, occupy till I come. Like we told your son earlier, occupy till I come. I've got things for you to do each day. Go do them. Live by faith. Reach people. That's it.
Bro.
That the longest episode yet or no?
Believe it or not, no. My boy Chill Aguilar, old set free guy.
Yeah.
Almost 3 hours.
What?
Yeah, man. Me and Chill were getting down for
a minute.
So I don't want you to leave. Never fails marriage.
Yep. So
how did that come about?
I sat with a couple friends of ours. We came to faith and we joke. We wrote the book on how not to be married. God wrote the book on marriage, the Bible. The Bible's a story of marriage. Genesis begins with a marriage. Revelation ends with one. Church. Well, it's a story of a king, Jesus, coming to slay a serpent, Satan, to redeem his bride, the church. So I, remarrying my wife, had to look at all these verses, read all this stuff. Like, we got to figure out a marriage. So we didn't realize we were getting like a PhD in just understanding the Bible and what to do right. So I would sit with couples, talk to them. You know, there's you and your wife. Hey, Brian, can we go? I just go to Starbucks, sit with them or wherever they want to go, hang out with them for 2 or 3 hours. Well, the Bible says this, the Bible says that. I learned that a lot of Christian counselors are very biased. They don't really know the Bible. They just went to school for counseling with Christianity. And I said, man, some of the stuff they're telling you is whack. You know, move out of your house. Go spend more time with your friends. I'm like, no. So a couple of ours called to get a good friend of ours to this day and said, hey, my husband was leaving. Then he came home and his friend, we were in bed being unfaithful. Crazy, can you meet with us? I went to meet with them at Starbucks, pull up. He's there slouched in the chair. She's there with the big glasses feeling crazy. And I'm like, Lord, what should I say? And as I got up to them, I just said, hey, first thing. And I mean, he was shaking, ready to kill someone. He has guns. He's like, if I go upstairs and get these guns and come down, I'm going to prison because I'm shooting this guy anyway. And they have 2 kids. And I just said to them, and it was like the Lord laid it on my heart, do you realize that after salvation, the greatest act of forgiveness is to a spouse? Which made her feel crazy, but made him feel empowered. And I said, do you want to forgive? And he says, I do. And he was shook up. It just happened an hour ago. And she was like, yeah, I'm totally, you know. So I sat with them for an hour. They were leaving to go out of state to his dad's right then. And I said, Lord, I need to put everything in one place that I learned. And I'd learned early on, you know, you want to stop smoking. Not that I ever smoked, but 7 days, you'll get to 1 step. 14 days, you'll get to 21. I'm like, I'm going to write a 31-day. Because here's the idea. You and me might put more time into jiu-jitsu per day, and this will convict us, than we do our marriages. Your wife comes home now, hey, babe, what are you doing? What's like hanging out with Brian? You'll hang out, you'll talk, you're around, or you're thinking about it, you're texting. But most people don't put more than 15 minutes in. But if you were telling me today your wife's out of here, this room might not be here anymore. These things might not be here. Your son might not be here. Your life, everything changes. Right. So marriage is the most important thing that we give the least amount of time to. So I thought if I can write something for that couple and to my kids that 7 days in, you've got something out of it, 14 days in, 21 days in, 31 days. And it's because we read a book by James Robinson called Nightlight years ago when we transitioned to church. My mom had passed. We were just in a tough season. And 15 minutes a night for us literally just bonded us in a whole new way.
We talk about 15 minutes a night.
Yeah.
1 hour a week.
Changes everything.
1 day a month.
Yeah.
1 weekend a year.
And here's the thing. Listen.
And people go, that's it?
And here's the thing. Netflix, as corny as it sounds, and I'm not saying go live this life, you know, that seems or whatever. People sitting watching shows together can change their marriage. I get you want to do missionary work and orphanages, but just something bonding, simple. Something you can do, taking the kids to sports, going on a walk, doing whatever.
Right.
The goal with that was, what could I hand someone that's thin enough, like 140 pages, a couple that's struggling? Brian, we heard your story. What can we do? Go sit with your pastor. That might work. Go online, do a video series. It's $100-something bucks. Or take this and read it. You open it, chapter on finance, being physical, whatever, his part, her part. The first 10 chapters are breaking you down. Here's God's word. The next part is theologically saying this is what marriage is. And the next part is all of us bringing our mistakes out. So it's written with the idea love never fails, but I left the love out, so it just never fails. So they figure that out. So cool. And I put it out myself, put it on Amazon, and I sell enough to give enough away. That's the goal. Because there are a couple of books to get printed, so I try and keep them selling that I can never have to reject giving them, because I believe in it. It's very theological, very Bible, not all this just random whatever.
I mean, a good marriage is basically a foundation. Mm-hmm. I mean, for the saved, for the unsaved,
everything.
I mean, for everything. Everything goes back to that core of that family, right? That I'm not trying to put down single mothers. I get it, but
no, yeah,
it's one of those things where, you know, I think Melissa told the kids the other day, she was just like, your dad comes first.
Yeah.
Because if we're good,
that is huge.
Then we're going to be good for you guys. You know what I mean? And they were like, really? And I said, that's the way it is. You know, and marriage is a lot of work, right?
It's meant to be. You put two people together.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. I always tell people, you know, we've been married 26 years.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of people that call us.
Yeah.
And I said, I can give you the tools, but you got to build the house.
Yeah, if you don't do it yourself, and we were going to call it, death by marriage, and like people laugh, but that's what Christianity is. Christianity is you realizing
Dying
you
to
have the
yourself.
picket fence, you have this, die to self. And here's what happens. You and me are brothers, we're single, we got our own little issues. I'm walking around carrying my sin struggles, all the rest. Now we both get married. How is God going to deal with us even more? Is that a negative, or is it a positive that God's going to ask you to die to self more? And what you just said is so true about man and wife being first. Everything in the garden was perfect, aside from that man was alone. And the Bible says it's not good that man is alone. If my wife texts my son right now and said, I'm done with your dad, I'm out of this marriage, the car ride home will be terrible.
Yes.
So if your wife's not on board with the podcast, not on board with the jiu-jitsu, I'm not saying they're robots or we're robots to them, but God created this a certain way,
right?
That when men are going through it, I go, how is it with your wife? Oh my gosh, yeah, it's not good when man's alone. Remember a crazy guy calling our church, terrorizing everyone, didn't even go to our church, asking all these questions on my wife and this, and the pastor's wife said, why is he acting like this? It's not good that man's alone. And I don't care how tough you are as a man or whatever, you want your wife's affirmation. And by default, because of the curse, part of what she wants is to rule over you in Genesis. So that's the conflict. He's going to want to lead, but she's going to want to lead. He's called to be the covering because he's going to throw the first blow if someone's trying to kill the family. Right. You're sitting here thinking about the bills and this being a success and your future. Your wife's maybe thinking, and I'm not saying to typecast women. Women can have jobs if they want. Women can do what they want. Don't think we're all like that. But I'm saying, like, there's an operation here where man is the covering.
Right.
And do you want to protect your wife?
Yeah.
Do you want to love her and finish good? I mean, that's a man.
Physically, spiritually, all that.
And that's what women want to hear.
Right.
And if you ban the man, he doesn't want to do that. And if you ban the woman, she doesn't trust man now, and she will not give herself because she wants to feel protected and loved.
Right.
And men listening, please catch yourself on this. You will go to work, come home, feel good, doing whatever. The second your wife disrespects you, you will lose it.
Yeah.
That's it, because men just want to be like, do you know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I cleaned around here. I provided the bills. I just did a podcast. I'm putting the effort in. And she's like, oh, you didn't even pick up your shoes. And you're like, what? We got it. We're always growing.
It's so simple. I tell people it's
so simple. It's hard.
Yes. It's like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But easy.
Yeah.
Women want to be loved. Men want to be respected.
Yep.
And it's very simple, but it's hard. Mm-hmm. Dude, we can talk all day.
So that's out there, though. Never fails on Amazon.
Never fails.
I'm just briansumner.net and Brian Sumner online. And then my podcast, I have to have you on the Foolishness podcast. Foolishness, First Corinthians 19. Yeah, we'll get on there and just talk jiu-jitsu for an hour or two.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Check Brian out. Skater. I don't even want to tell him what you are. Everything. Renaissance man here. Author. I'm a little jealous, man.
Yeah, right.
I'm a little jealous.
Yeah.
Anyways, we got one more thing me and Cam will do.
Yeah.
So let me pull this up. It's what we call our Furious 5.
Furious 5 questions?
Furious 5 questions.
That could be like another hour.
No, it's furious,
okay,
Brian.
Furious.
Let's see what we got here. All right. We put on a little Furious 5 music for this one.
This is funny.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick. If you never got into skateboarding, what would you be doing?
MMA.
If
I could go back, I would have gone to MMA before skating, for sure.
We've been all messed
My
up.
whole life was Double Dragon, Renegade, Street Fighter, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan. Everything is just these rhythms. My mind just works that way.
Wow.
And I don't know what God would have done with it, but that's what I would have loved to have done. But my size and this weight, I'd have been drunk.
You could have dropped down to 170, man.
Yeah. Not by now. Yeah.
I know. I tell everybody that. Like, yeah, you want to compete? I was like, no, man. Like, why? Because I'm like 190, and I would have
some
to
of
be
those
down
guys
to one.
Would be brutes.
Yeah, I'd be done.
Rich Franklin, or no, Robbie Lawler, you'd be in there with
my friend Khalil Roundtree.
Yeah,
massive.
Khalil's a beast.
You said your wife is Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
what would you rather eat?
Yeah,
Menudo or Scouse?
Scouse.
Tell them about Scouse real quick. What is Scouse?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a real podcast. You are really doing some, because here's what's crazy. Even the accents started coming back then. That's funny because you said Scouse. See? So Scouse is when England was getting bombed, they would have food, and a lot of Scousers don't know this. And so Mum would make food on a Monday, Tuesday, all through the week, and whatever was left over, they would just keep. At the end of the week, they would throw it in a pot and put a bunch of mixtures in there. And so it would be whatever meat, whatever. So typically, people from Liverpool are called Scousers. So if you call anyone from Liverpool Scouse, they'll know exactly what it is. Scouse is the best. Mexicans would love it. Love it.
I thought it when I read about Scouse. I was like, this sounds good, and it sounds like almost
like menudo
stuff
or
that
something.
Mexicans do.
They just don't have tongues and eyeballs and all that.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
I
mean, my dad said that his mom would make them tacos. They didn't have enough meat, so they would cut up potatoes and put the potatoes in.
Yeah.
Now that's the cool thing to do. Right?
Yeah.
But it's just getting whatever you got.
Yeah.
Put it in there and go.
I actually have a potato and bacon burrito in the fridge that I forgot about. You just reminded me about. Yeah.
So when we hook up, you're going to have to give me some Scouse.
It took me 5 years to get used to eating Mexican food because English people do not know how to hold. My mom, when she was alive, used to call them quesadillas.
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 It's better than the quesadillas.
Yeah.
How did they say, Kev? We were laughing at one day about that, how the white people say quesadillas.
White people?
Quesadillas.
That's what my mom said, quesadilla or taco. She called it a taco at first.
Taco?
Yeah. Because there's no Mexican food in England and in Liverpool, and hopefully by now. But Scouse, I've never even made it. It was years ago.
That's funny.
But my wife could easily make it. Yeah,
so easy.
Amazing.
All right, now I lined her up. So you have to make the vegan.
Yeah, she's looked at it online before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any hobbies that you keep on the down low? Nobody knows that you do.
You know what's funny? Not hobbies, but you know what I noticed? I like singing Mariah Carey songs. How's that? So that song, I don't even know what it was.
Don't get me started.
But I was pulling up to Starbucks the other day, and a Mariah Carey song was playing, and I was like, and I turned it down, and I was laughing. I was like, I need to tell someone that on a podcast. Hobbies, I mean, I play guitar bad, but I've been playing for like 10 years. I guess you know what I do? I collect figures sometimes.
Really?
Like, I would go, it's more my wife's fault. I would go to the swap meets, and so me and my son, we'd see old Ninja Turtle figures, and we'd see old G.I. Joes, and we'd pick them up. And so even now with watching The Mandalorian, I have a few friends that are believers around America, and so they will find figures that are in Walmart that are $20, but 15 people are going to go buy it and put them online for $80, so they'll like buy it for me.
That's cool.
And then I in turn will find them for them and then send them back. So it's kind of become
that's a cool little hobby.
Just a way to relate, texting each other throughout the week and stuff. Yeah, it's random. But The Mandalorian's such a good show, so
I know I gotta get on.
Yeah.
Number 4. If you can change one mistake in your life, what would it be?
Man. What would it be? It would have to have been just getting into so many fights back then and just the anger side of it. Like, I remember getting in a huge fight one time when, like, my wife slammed the door and I, like, got a hold of, like, what are you doing? And, like, her mom, who wasn't even there, just, like, called the cops. And that went on my record and I got it off. But to this day, that's probably why I couldn't have guns unless I went and fought it. So I'd say any of that, which is annoying, you know what I mean? Because I would go but that alone, just like slamming the door, and it was like, what? And then just, yeah.
It's so funny. I talked to somebody the other day. I'm not going to say who they are.
Yeah.
They're really close to me.
Yeah.
They went to the gun store to go buy a gun.
And they denied him?
And they denied him because his wife got in an argument. She called the police.
Yeah.
It wasn't crazy. She just called the police.
Yeah.
And it went on his record, and he couldn't buy the gun.
And do you know why?
What?
You know why? Because when the cop, and I went to the police and said, hey, this is here. And they go, yeah, you just go to court and, like, fight it. All got dropped. But the guy literally said, because of what OJ did, the second that call is even made, if your wife is on drugs and she makes the call tonight about you, and
done,
the door slammed, and I remember just like, what do you do? You know what I mean? And it was like, and her mom, and the police report was so ridiculous. We got like it all written in legal documents and sent, and the judge was like, I wasn't a citizen yet, so they had the power. And you know what's crazy? Do you know who was overseeing California then?
Who?
Kamala Harris.
Oh, God.
That's the name that's on the thing. And I was like, so if I wanted to defend my family, I mean, I got enough people around me that, you know, cops and everything, whatever, no big deal. But that to me was just like in that moment.
That's wild.
But aside from that, you know what? I just changed probably my eating. I'm just lazy with stuff. I'm so focused on everything else. I'm just, Lord, convict me of gluttony.
Whatever
that's
I
what
need
it
to grab.
is.
Yeah. You got to get on the Scouse diet.
Scouse, yeah. Darren Till.
Number 5. Last one for you. Most influential person in your life ever.
I mean, obviously Jesus, because everything's him. But it would just have to been Bruce Lee in the way I think. But I would say, you know, my mom and dad, because they were just driven. It's crazy. My mom was like the most loving, hospitable person I have ever met. When my mom passed, I couldn't go back to, you know, I gone back to America, then I came back. And she was so sick with cancer for like 2 years. And I was either going to, they didn't tell me how crazy it was. I went back, I visited her, hair gone, eyeball, and just everything. She led her to the Lord. She came to faith. And my sisters said, either you're going to come before she passes and see her, or way after for a funeral. So I went to see her while she was there. But right when she passed, we've been anticipating it for 2 years. And my friends were coming over right then. And it must have been like, 6 or 7 years ago. And I said, should I tell them not to come over? And my sister Elaine's like, no, let them. And so they showed up to the door. And I go outside and I go, hey, you know, she just passed. And they were all like this. And my sister's like, it was kind of crazy thinking about it now. My friend Barry Wong said, can I see her, Bri? And I was like, you want to go in the room and see my mom pass? He goes, can I see her? And my sister's like, yeah. And they came in the room. And my dad's there, my 2 sisters, me. And he bent over and kissed her on the head. And we all started crying. And my friends all came in and kissed her on the head. And it was like this memorial to our house was always open. The tea and biscuits are always out. And I'd say her example for me to just love people, crazy, so driven. And I didn't accomplish all this stuff, but my sisters think like that. And then my dad just the same way, just driven. He just got up, he did what needed to be done. So Bruce for his thinking, you know, and trying to do whatever. But he was influenced by so much of Eastern culture and took from all the books the idea of philosophies and brought that to us. But I mean, my parents' drive and my mom's heart for people, you know. So praise God she came to faith, but definitely my parents. And the older I get, the more I see it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's amazing how as you get older, you realize, like, how in the heck did they do that?
Oh, it's crazy.
Now that you got to do it, right?
I would have loved to have met her parents and said, who was it? Because, you know, that influenced her, because the house is always open, and she just, man, my sisters have said, do you realize how astonishing my mom, I think back to like New Year's Eve, and have my dad be outside and here, and one of my sister's drunk friends, like, I've never met a man like you, George. And now I'm older, I'm like, man, I just think about the way they are. I've never got into it with my dad once.
Wow.
It's crazy, you know. Got into my kids plenty, but my dad, yeah. So.
Hey, man.
Yeah. If you guys are still here.
Oh, they're still here, man. No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, that'll conclude this. What is this, Cam? 13? No, 14. Oof. No, 13. Street Gospel number 13 with Brian Sumner. Check him out on Instagram. Check out his podcast, the Foolishness Podcast. Pick up his book. And this is not just for those that are married. This is for those that are engaged. If you're thinking about getting married, if you're single, get the knowledge first. I learned a lot, man. I appreciate you coming out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good time. Now maybe we'll get some rolling in.
Yeah. I think my son is ready for me to get him to the skate park.
Again.
It's the longest he's sat in his life.
I know. My bad, Jude. Love you, man. Thanks for hanging in there. All right, y'all. We'll see you later.
God bless.
Have a good Christmas and New Year, because I don't think we're going to do another one, huh, Cam? Cam needs a break, but I mean, if Dana White wants to come, we'll make it an exception. I'll see y'all later.